Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sterling Heights City Council to order. If you would, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, please bless our elected officials, grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Amen. Madam Clerk, can we please have the roll call?
Mayor Taylor.
Here.
Mrs. Sarowski.
Here.
Mrs. Koski.
Present.
Mr. Radke.
Present.
Mrs. Schmidt.
Present.
Mr. Yanez.
Here.
Mrs. Zayarko.
Present.
Thank you, Council. We need approval of the agenda tonight.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the agenda with the removal of consent agenda item 10H.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First item on our agenda tonight, as always, is a report from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to take a couple minutes to highlight some of the many events that we have coming up, centered on our spring weather and soon-to-be summer. As everyone knows, we have a number of cleanup days throughout April and May, most of which are really popular. For example, the Hazardous Waste Day. Please take note of this date. It's Saturday, April 15th. We always get great participation in this, and individuals can bring their hazardous household waste to our DPW facility and get it disposed of. So April 15th. Then on April 22nd is another really popular event, and that's our Paper Shred Day, again at our DPW facility. So we have long lines. We encourage you to get there early. It's a wonderful event, though, and that's both of those are from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then we have our Shine Cleanup Day, which is going to be on May 6th. Always very popular. We clean up homes throughout the city. These are seniors and other individuals throughout the community that have mobility limitations and so on and are not able to do it themselves. So we have a group of volunteers, our volunteer corps, that goes out and cleans up 20, 30 homes. And again, that is on May 6th. And then throughout May, we also have cleanup days at our DPW facility where you can just bring general yard debris, tires, things that you stumble on cleaning up throughout spring. And you can bring them to DPW. We have dumpsters there. And you can do that on Saturday, May 13th. And Saturday, May 20th. So see our website if you'd like more information on those events. I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that they're coming up once again. And a sure sign of summer is Sterling Fest. And a lot of people, thousands of residents, plan their summer around Sterling Fest. So we'd like to take a couple minutes to highlight the exciting acts that are coming to Sterling Fest this year.
Sterling Fest 2023 returns on July 27th, 28th, and 29th.
Oh, yeah. Ice, ice, baby. Yeah.
The party goes old school on July 27th with Hip Hop Hooray, performing the dopest beats of the 80s and 90s. This Texas-based national act makes its Michigan debut at Sterling Fest on the AT&T main stage.
Ooh, baby, baby. Baby, baby, baby. Push it.
On Friday night, legendary drummer and founding member of Guns N' Roses, Steven Adler, performs all of the hits of Guns N' Roses' debut album, Appetite for Destruction. Welcome to the Jungle, Sweet Child of Mine, Paradise City, and Mr. Brownstone can all be heard in Dodge Park at Sterling Fest on July 28th. Opening for Steven Adler, No Resolve. The Detroit-based band has topped the Billboard charts and is known for not only their original songs, but also taking Disney and other pop hits and giving them the energy of hard rock.
And if the real thing don't do the trick, you're gonna make up something quick. You're gonna burn, 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 burn into the wet. Ooh, barracuda.
And finally, on Saturday night, widely regarded as one of the greatest voices in the history of rock and roll, Ann Wilson of Heart performed some of the most well-known rock songs of all time, including Magic Man, Barracuda, and Crazy on You. The trailblazing woman icon is sure to make Saturday, July 29th a memorable evening at Sterling Fest. Visit sterlingfest.info for more information on these and other amazing acts on our 4 different stages at Sterling Fest on July 27th through 29th.
He's a magic man, mama.
Of course, we have the Memorial Day Parade, we have music in the park, and so many other events. So it's going to be a really exciting spring, summer, and we look forward to seeing you all at these really, really popular events. And Mayor, that concludes my report this evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpool. First, our next item on our agenda tonight is a presentation of the 21st recipient of a Sterling Heights Fire Department's Survival Coin. We have a presentation from our fire chief, Kevin Edmond, and our EMS coordinator, Kelly Bergen. Chief Edmond.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, Mr. Vanderpool. I'm pleased to bring back this program of the Survivor Coin thing. We have our 21st person to honor tonight. And this system that we have in place, a key individual in the system is EMS Captain Kelly Bergen. And I'd like to introduce him right now to kind of go over the synopsis of what happened.
Thank you, Fire Chief. Council, thank you for letting me come today. Quick background, if you don't mind, I'm going to read off my paper so I don't miss anything important. The Sterling Heights Fire Department instituted the coin program back in 2016, and we've been successful with our ROSC in the field. Unfortunately, COVID did suspend that program for several years, and I'm happy to announce the chief reinstituted it, and today we have our 21st coin. A little background on the evening, or the morning of the incident. It was back in January 16th of this year. Mr. Woods was situated at his house. Him and his husband, Kenyon, started a normal morning routine, and then Mr. Woods started to feel a little funny. He started to self-monitor himself, vital signs. Everybody's got that little machine. And then his symptoms quickly evolved into a full cardiac arrest. He went to the floor. Kenyon called 911, and he got a hold of the dispatcher, and he is fortunately here today too. The dispatcher gave him CPR instructions over the phone. When our Sterling Heights Fire Department Engine 3 and Squad 3 showed up at the house, Kenyon was doing CPR at Mr. Woods. So a very important part of the chain of survival. Over the next 16 minutes, our crews, our Sterling Heights crews, did many life-saving procedures, including administration of medicines, advanced airway, and they defibrillated Mr. Woods 6 times in the house. When they realized there was recurrent VFib, they realized they had to get to the hospital. So they loaded Mr. Woods on the stretcher, used our Lucas machine for continuous CPR, and en route to the hospital, they had one last-ditch effort. They defibrillated him again, and luckily this one put Mr. Woods in a sustainable cardiac rhythm. They continued transport to Beaumont, Troy, where he received the care. After a short stay, he's out. He is here today, and I'm happy that we can give our 21st coin today. Also in attendance I'm going to announce the firefighters. We have firefighter Kazmarek behind me. We have firefighter Antone and firefighter Littleton, along with county dispatcher Patrick Connolly. And then I want to quickly introduce a doctor from the My Heart Network, part of the CARES network, that we report all our CPR statistics to. His name is Dr. Shu.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Dr. Anthony Su. I'm an emergency physician in Trinity Health, Ann Arbor. Save My Heart, our mission is as a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving sudden cardiac arrest survival through survivor advocacy, community awareness, and data-driven research. The story that you just heard is unique in the sense that he survived well with a very good neurologic outcome. Many of you know the story of Damar Hamlin and the football player. This was just like that. And unfortunately, it's not enough. 7 to 8% of those who receive CPR actually survive to discharge, like Mr. Wood. So as a result, we'd like to celebrate these wins. The only lesson I'm going to give you guys is know that heart attacks and cardiac arrest are not exactly the same. They do overlap. But if you have chest pain, you call 911. If they go down, you start doing something as a bystander. So that's the lesson that I wanted to give to you. In the meantime, I'd like to present certificates as well as coins for the following people. Matt Wood, if you would come up. As a survivor, thank you very much for your advocacy and being here today to show us that CPR does work.
Yeah.
Kenyon Claycorn, you get to come down here.
Do you want us to take it from your?
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So as the bystander, you provided excellent CPR and are a model to us all. I have Brandon Kazmarek. Good work. Is Cormac Littleton here? Good work. Is Lieutenant Daryl Curtis? I think he's not here today. How about Mark Anton? Mark, good work. And is Lance Stevens here? Nope, he's not here. And so we have certificates for Lance Stevens. And then lastly, and I think this is the most important one, is Patrick Connolly. Through his training, he was able to guide everyone to the right time and the right place. And they are the fulcrum as the dispatchers. They will remember this day. Thank you. So this concludes my statements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chief, anything else?
On this one, I can't be more happy for Matt Woods for the outcome. This really shows you that the system works when all the key components are in place, and I couldn't be more proud of the people that I manage.
We couldn't either. Thank you. Before we wrap up, I want to give the opportunity to Mr. Woods. Anything you want to say?
Come on up. You know, it's amazing what you really don't know the difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest until you've had them both. And I'm very fortunate to be here. Thanks to every single one of you. Right down, you know, from Kenyon starting CPR on me that morning, to being calm, cool, and collected and walk through it by the dispatcher. And then shortly after, I've never been so thankful to live so close to a firehouse. Really amazing, and thank you. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for all of you, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Chief Counsel. Is there anyone that'd like to make any comment? Mrs. Sarowski.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. So congratulations again, Mr. Woods, Kenyon. I don't know if you all caught that, but 7 to 8, Dr. Shu said 7, I'm a nurse, by the way, if you, most of you have heard me say this before, but I'll say it for the ones that haven't heard it. 7 to 8% of those that receive CPR survive if they've had cardiac arrest, is what Dr. Shu said. That is a very, very, very low number. And so, Mr. Woods, you are very lucky, and you are blessed, not just lucky. You have a couple guardian angels that have been watching you and keeping you going. So that is not, but it's not just by luck. It's due to all the pieces falling into place at the right times and working together, from CPR being started to the dispatcher helping you through that and making sure that you knew what you were doing and staying calm and keeping going, and the fire department getting there and the EMS getting there on time and getting all the right medications in the right order and the right times and staying on track. So those things just happen, and constant, I mean, 7 times to be defibbed is unbelievable, and it's a lot of energy going through that body in that heart. And somehow, by the grace of God and miracles, you're here. So it is amazing, and it's wonderful, and we're very happy. And so congratulations.
Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Woods, I'm so happy to see you today, and I think it's just tremendous. Your care, I think, was exemplary of how good our fire department is and how much they care. And I think all the residents at home know that we have one of the best fire departments in the state. It's things like this that prove that. That's why they support our fire department. That's why they pay for it. And I'm so glad you're here today because it's just an amazing story. It's touching because it's like the edge between life and death. And I think we have to thank our fire department and the dispatch team and the doctors and everyone else. But I'm so glad to see you here today. And I wish you many more years in our community. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else? Mr. Yanez.
Yeah, I can't let this one go by. I'm incredibly proud of all of our city employees, but especially when it's fire department related. You know, Mr. Wood, when they asked you to speak, I thought you were just going to say happy to be here. Because we're happy that you are here. And Kenyon, your spouse? Your spouse? So have you ever done CPR before? So a different kind of dummy.
True spouse.
You have been trained in CPR before, right?
Down at Henry Ford, when I was volunteering down there, they made us, go through the CPR course, but that was like 15 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just a saying, it's a fact that every 911 call starts, every 911 run starts with the call. And I especially want to thank that dispatcher for the work that he did and making sure that he stayed calm, cool, and collected. So Kenyon could be calm, cool, and collected. Mr. Woods could be here. And of course, I can't say enough about our guys. They're just incredible professionals. Through the chair to Captain Bergen, how many people were actually on that run? How many first responders? So we had the bystander, one bystander.
Kenyon, the bystander who called or activated 911, engine crew of 3 and the squad crew of 2.
So we had 5, it took 5 people to get.
Lucas machine with continuous CPR.
5.5 people. 5 people in a robot.
I don't know, I think Lucas counts that one.
To be able to tell the survival story today. And I think that's one thing that we can't forget, that even with all the technology and all the training, Doctor, thank you for all the work that you do on this type of work. But it still takes people. It still takes human beings and one robot. And even then, to Mrs. Soroski's point, survival rate's still only 7 to 8%. But it does take a lot of people to do this, a lot of knowledge, a lot of hard work, a lot of training. And I think, obviously I'm biased, we do have the best fire department in the state. And I congratulate every single one of you and the dispatcher for the great work you did. And Mr. Wood, I hope you pay taxes in the city of Sterling Heights for many, many years to come. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Yanez. Mrs. Zarko.
First of all, I'm grateful that you're here, Mr. Woods, with us tonight. Certainly, you are a survivor, and, you know, you'll be thriving after this, I'm sure. But to bring attention more to CPR is, if we could ask our Parks and Rec Director to come up and tell us about the CPR classes that are now available through Parks and Rec. I think it would be a great public service to, you know, tell people that these classes are now available through the city.
Mr. Langlois.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everybody. We have been gracious to have a great partnership with our fire department for a number of years. It's been probably close to 6, 7, maybe even more years that we've been working together to host community CPR classes. It's something that I did in my earlier career in Clinton Township, and something that I thought was missing here in Sterling Heights, and so I'm grateful for the partnership that we have with the fire department. With that, we also have started even at a younger age with babysitter training classes and home alone training classes where our fire department, our police department are providing these critical skills to our young teenagers in the community and even younger to make sure that everybody is prepared in these types of life-threatening situations. So I commend our fire department team, the emergency dispatch team, and everybody involved for not only this, but the continued support and continued efforts in intentional means to try and bring CPR and the importance of CPR to light in our community. So if you are interested, you can always go to our website. I should have said that before, but myshpr.net, or look at the city magazine. There's that information's in our magazine that goes out 3 times a year, but also follow us on all the social media outlets, and we'll continue to provide updates along the way. So thank you for that opportunity.
Anyone else? Mrs. Koski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another example of why we are so very, very proud of our fire department. Another example of how great they are. We used to joke years ago and say, if you're going to have a heart attack, you better have it in Sterling Heights because that's the only way you're going to survive. So this is another example, as I said, of how great they are. And Mr. Woods, the smile on your face tells me that you are grateful to all these men here that helped you out. And yes, we do want you to pay taxes for many, many years to come. Congratulations to both of you. Thank you.
Mrs. Schmidt.
Okay, I'll go last.
If you
That's
want.
fine.
Pick his pocket.
I too would like to congratulate you on the success of everyone around you. As an instructor in BLS and Heart Saver, we teach our students how important it is. And like you had said, it's been 15 years and it's kind of like riding a bike. You know, once you get through it, you know, we go over it and practice and practice and practice to get our students at the high school level certified, and making sure that they know they have the tools to be successful in that. But without a doubt, our dispatcher at the county level really went above and beyond and did exactly what you were trained to do, and I thank you. Our firefighters, can never say enough about them. And the Lucas device, I have seen that puppy in action, and it's unbelievable, and it's a great tool and a great asset that our taxpayers have funded for you folks, and it's an amazing thing to watch when they come in through the ER with that device going. So I'm glad we can provide those tools for you as well. But thank everyone, and congratulations, everyone, really, congratulations.
Yeah, you know, as Ms. Schmidt was just saying, everyone, this is one of the occasions where you get to really be reminded of what we do as a city and what we exist here for. You never want to see somebody go through a traumatic situation like this, Mr. Woods, but we have a great reminder of the type of services that we offer here and the way that we work with our county, with our hospital systems, and everyone working together. It's been several years since I've done it, but having been on a ride along with the fire department and seeing them snap into action, you know, it's damn impressive. That's all I can say is that, you know, these are true professionals, from the medical staff at the hospital, the EMS staff on our ambulances, the firefighters, and the dispatchers, and our police department as well, keeping the scene secured and safe. So it's really awesome to see it. I want to say, you know, we had a ribbon cutting earlier today for a new bocce ball court over at the senior center, and our county commissioner, Don Van Sickle, was there. And Don was one of the first recipients of this coin. And it just sort of struck me when somebody was saying, you know, we hope you stick around and pay taxes. You know, it's just amazing to see that Don's had this whole life. He's lived since surviving, and he was dead, right? I mean, he was like the doctor said, like, there was no coming back. It was over. Like, I kind of remember them saying he was just, you know, we'd kind of like given up on him, and then he came back after all the work that we had done. You have an opportunity to live a second life, and God bless you, your family, your husband. I wish the best for you. I thank you for being here tonight, and most importantly, to the residents out there, take that class if you can. I'm going to try to commit to doing it. You never know, even though it was 15 some years ago, you never know if that was the difference that saved your loved one's life. And every one of us watching this tonight has somebody that they would want to save in their household. So we should all commit to doing something like that. Everyone, great job. Congratulations. One more big round of applause for everyone. All right. So the standard has been set for our fire department. And we are going to swear in a couple new firefighters who are going to be serving our city proudly. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, Mr. Vanderpool, Mr. Koszewski. I'm going to bring forward, there's 3 people that we hired 2 weeks ago. One of them is in paramedic school tonight, so he can't be here tonight. But we have 2 that I would like to have come up now. These are our 2 newest members of the organization. You guys can just stand over there. I would like to introduce Allison Johnson and Joshua Fair. Allison's been a paramedic for 2 years. Her inspiration as a firefighter-paramedic comes from her mother. Her mother was a combat paramedic, and then went on to become a nurse. While she was in high school, she started taking classes to become a firefighter-paramedic, and then we have her today. So her determination and passion comes from both of her parents, so we're happy to have her. Joshua started off in a manufacturing job, ended up getting laid off, and said, boy, I want to know what my career would be. So he chose the path of being a firefighter-paramedic. He's been a paramedic for about 5 months. He went to Camone Community College to obtain his fire and EMS, and he's been working at MedStar until we snagged him. I'll just say real quickly, Ethan, who could not be here because he's in paramedic school, we snagged him from Warren. So he was one of the Warren cadets. So this just shows this is a destination for people to work in the fire service. So if you stand over there, we'll swear you in. Raise your right hand. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
That I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Sterling Heights City Charter.
and the Sterling Heights City Charter.
That I will comply with the rules and regulations
That I will comply with the rules and regulations
of the Sterling Heights Fire Department
of the Sterling Heights Fire Department,
and will discharge the duties of my office to the best of my ability.
and discharge the duties of my office to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Not really a public speaker, but I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity. The City of Sterling Heights Fire Department and my family, truly blessed, so thank you.
Thank you.
Wanted to say this has been a dream ever since I was a kid, really, so I'm really happy and really excited to be here with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, council, any comments?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Zarko?
Well, first of all, congratulations, but we know what a competitive field this is right now as far as, you could have had a job probably in 10 different cities right now. And I'm grateful that you chose Sterling Heights, and so welcome aboard. If there's anything we can do to help you, you have a great team that's behind you at the fire department, and certainly a great team sitting up here, that are grateful that you chose Sterling Heights. So be safe out there, and we appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Ms. Zarko. Mr. Yanis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Chief, where'd the chief go?
He's there.
Oh, there he is, hiding. I would say the police chief says poached, you said snag. It's much better. Talk to the police chief about when we steal somebody from another community. But there's a reason why, though, they come to Sterling Heights. They leave other communities and come to Sterling Heights, right?
Because we're a destination
We're a
department.
destination
With
department.
the support of council and the equipment and the education that we provide our people and the fine work that they do day in and day out. I mean, tonight was a prime example of what they do and what they're capable of. And like I said, that whole team effort was able to, bring Mr. Woods here tonight.
And that doesn't go unnoticed that people leave a place of employment to come to work here in Sterling Heights still to this day. And I think that's fantastic. I do have a question for Allison. I want to know where you went to high school and you were taking these classes.
Wayne Memorial High School.
Wayne Memorial. And was it the class in school, or was it like a vocational?
It was part of a vocational program. It was a firefighting and a EMT course.
Fantastic. I wish more schools offered programs like that, so kids are prepared when they move into these jobs. She said when she was a kid. Sorry, young lady. But anyways, congratulations. It's a great department to work for, and you'll have a great career here. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Yanez. Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome. We expect a lot out of our police and fire, but you're not gonna find a more supportive community for what you're trying to do. I think you had a great example, a front seat to how good you can do at your jobs. And we're gonna count on you to do that. And we're gonna give you everything you can, all the resources you need to do that. We're gonna have high expectations. But I know you're gonna meet them because we only take the best here. So good luck and Godspeed.
Mrs. Sarowski.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. So again, to echo my colleagues, congratulations and welcome. As you have seen, tough job, but easy, tough to follow, but a good track to follow because we give you the tools and we give you the good people to work with. As you've heard and we know that you've been snagged from other departments, it's who you work with that makes the job. It is the destination and the place that makes the job. I've had multiple jobs over the years, and it really makes the difference when you are at the right place, and you know it once you find it. So I hope that this is where you decide to stay and land forever, and we appreciate that you're here, and we will give you every tool that you need, and we are very glad to have you. So congratulations and welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Welcome to the city of Sterling Heights. We're glad to have you. We're lucky to have you, and we're proud to have you. So, as my colleague said, I think we're all lucky to be in the city of Sterling Heights, and many of us have. I've been here for almost 14 years now. Some of my colleagues longer, some shorter. I've seen directors come and go. I've seen employees come and go. But there's a tradition here of doing things the right way, doing your job, being proud of the work that you do, and conducting yourself in a certain way. And it's because we hire people like you, and we have that expectation, but we're certain that you're going to live up to it. You saw it tonight. I mean, this is the level of service that our residents expect, because this is obviously, I get the chance to talk to schools. I know, I'm sure my colleagues do and other mayors across the country do. And when you go in and you talk to schools, they teach them about the president and they teach them about the Congress and they teach them about the Supreme Court. And honestly, they don't do anything, in my opinion, that level of government. Well, what do? Right? But they don't teach them about what we actually do in cities. They don't teach them that, cities are responsible for clean drinking water. Cities are responsible for the roads that you travel to and from to get to work and school. And they don't teach enough, in my opinion, about the work that our first responders are doing. What we're doing here is important work. You are important people, and you have a very important role. And I thank you for taking on that responsibility. You could choose to do anything, but you choose to be out there saving the lives of our community. God bless. As Michael said, Godspeed. And everyone, one more big round of applause for these two new firefighters. Chief, you are dismissed.
I've got other stuff that I have to be here for. Sorry.
Nice try.
I'm a public servant 24/7, 365, just like you.
Your troops can be dismissed then. Yes. Thank you very much for the presentations tonight. I appreciate it. All right, we have one more presentation tonight, and this is a presentation of reports on commercial parking requirements and beekeeping. Presentation is going to be done by our Assistant City Planner, Jake Parcell, and our planning consultant, Giffels Webster. Mr. Parcell.
Thank you very much, Mayor Taylor, members of City Council, Mr. Vanderpool, and Mr. Koszubski. Tough act to follow. So we were directed last fall to discuss best practices for parking requirements in the city of Sterling Heights. along with beekeeping and the ordinance around keeping bees in the city of Sterling Heights. I'm going to hand it over for these presentations to Mr. Andy Amott from Giffords Webster, our planning consultant, and then follow in with a recommendation from the Office of Planning at the end. So without further ado, Mr. Amott.
All right, good evening, Council, Mayor Taylor, City Manager Mr. Vanderpool. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm happy to talk about this. So starting off with the parking requirements. Why is this being considered tonight and in general? So for one, minimum parking requirements were introduced by communities mainly as a result of the post-war suburbanization of our metropolitan areas all over the country in order to accommodate the proliferation of car ownership. The city has numerous developments which are overparked, those whose parking lots are never full or rarely approach half full. Developers for multifamily residential developments request parking waivers on a regular basis, indicating that the current ordinance does not necessarily match the market preferences. Also, that the current ordinance implies that vehicular transportation is the only form of transportation without considerations or accommodations for alternative modes of transportation, such as transit or bicycles. So moving on to the question of why are updated parking requirements important? For one, they're important to consider sustainable land use planning. Parking lots, especially large ones, have a significant effect on stormwater runoff and the quality of our lakes, rivers, and streams. Parking lots, when largely empty, are an inefficient land use, and they serve kind of as an opportunity cost for more productive, potentially tax revenue generating land uses that can serve people. Also, when neglected, parking lots can fall into disrepair and they can become an eyesore. Also, looking at some industry trends are an important consideration for updated parking requirements. For example, some municipalities are adjusting parking requirements based on input from the developer, a business owner, a landowner, and considering the unique demand of the users. Some are also capping the maximum number of parking spaces. Also, developers and business owners are starting to look at alternative modes of transportation more and more often. They are looking at driving habits for their companies' employees, especially now considering updated work from home policies as well. So looking at the current regulations here in this city. So the city operates currently off a parking minimum baseline with very minimal reduction strategies in the traditional zoning districts. There are a few reduction strategies, and those currently include parking in mixed-use developments that exceed 50,000 square feet. Those can be reduced by 10%. Also, the traditional mixed-use development node and Van Dyke mixed-use overlays also allow for reductions, but those are only a limited overlay zone. A few examples of the current use calculations that the city uses in their ordinance are that 2 spaces are required for each 1-bedroom multifamily unit and 2.5 for a 2-bedroom unit, for example. Also, a fast food restaurant with a gross floor area of 2,000 square feet would technically require 24 parking spaces plus at least 10 stacking spaces if it has a drive-through. And then a bank with a gross floor area of 5,000 square feet would require 34 parking spaces and at least 5 stacking spaces. So continuing on with some more of the parking related requirements here, bicycle parking is only required for commercial uses of 5,000 square foot or greater. And then additionally, these parking standards are not necessarily flexible or up to date to industry standards. The fact that the shared parking doesn't allow for overlap of hours and goes so far to require a 15% increase in the minimum number of parking spaces. Also, that off-street parking must be within 300 feet of the permitted use it serves. And also the fact that there's really no consideration of transit or alternative modes of transportation and no standards for electric vehicle parking, which is obviously a very recent kind of trend. So looking at some notable regulations in other communities, Detroit and Brighton allow for a reduction in required parking when on-street and public parking lots are available. Chesterfield Township allows for a reduction in required parking based on a shared parking formula for different hours of operation. Washington Township and Highland Park and Ypsilanti have a maximum percentage of required parking. Ann Arbor outright eliminated minimum parking requirements recently. Looking at Grand Rapids and Ypsilanti, they emphasize alternatives such as public transit proximity to reduce the minimum parking requirements. Novi waives parking requirements if the site is located within a special assessment district containing a public parking lot. And Rochester and Milford Village allow payment in lieu of parking, which would conceivably fund public parking. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the presentation back to Jake Parcell.
Thank you, Mr. Amott, and thank you, Givels Webster, for preparing this memorandum in your packet. So staff wanted to synthesize the data found in the report from Giffords and come up with a recommendation for council to move forward. Essentially, reducing parking is something that we've seen through special development options in front of council as far back as 2019, and as much as a 27% reduction, which is the Christian Financial Credit Union headquarters. We've seen items like removal of RV parking spaces and recreational vehicle parking spaces on nearly every development that we have moving forward. And we've also explored land banking spaces to provide extra green space and then adding spaces in if there is an intensity on the use that needs more parking on site. Staff essentially wants to move forward with emphasizing the flexibility that we have in our parking ordinance through our Van Dyke mixed use overlay, through our PUD process, and through other redevelopment processes, but really identify areas to raise the floor of minimum or reduce the floor of minimum parking in the city. We see a sweet spot being around 1.75% or 1.75 spaces per unit for a 2-bedroom residential unit, a decrease from the 2 spaces that we have currently right now. We'd like to move forward, if council is so inclined, to consider an ordinance amendment where we can address parking off of these best practices throughout the city, bring them up to current standards, account for EV parking on some of our larger developments, and then bring forward this zoning ordinance amendment to council for review within the next 90 days. This way, we believe we can comprehensively address parking throughout the entire city while still allowing for flexibility in some of our special development areas and help the city retool some of these larger sites for redevelopment, eliminate things like RV parking spaces that we typically see as a modification regardless, and move forward with bringing the city up to best practices. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a presentation, right? But we do have 2 suggested actions.
Yes.
So, council, is there anyone that would like to make the first suggested action?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
resolve to direct city administration to proceed with the drafting of an ordinance to amend zoning ordinance number 278 to update commercial parking requirements consistent with the recommendations of the Office of Planning.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mr. Radke?
Briefly, through the chair to Mr. Koszubski, the city plan, or the planning consultant and the planning department has said that we might want to reduce them on multifamily too. Should we amend this action to say multifamily also?
Mr. Koszubski.
I believe that we're considering any type of apartment rental to be commercial.
Okay, perfect then. Well, just very briefly, I've asked for this to come before council. I'm highly in favor. I just have just a few quick questions through the chair to, I guess, Mr. Parcells or Giffords Webster. The reduction in parkings for apartments, I think, is excellent. 1.75 makes a lot of sense. But I'm wondering if we should also, I guess, let me rephrase. Essentially, are we reducing it 20%, or are we just going to do it just for commercial developments for houses, or how are we going to move forward with other commercial developments too?
So the current zoning code has a table of parking allowances per use. What we'd like to do is address that based on what we've seen through best practices in other communities. Giffords did a lot of great research on comparable communities for us. I think moving forward, that's the first starting point. Really looking at some of the larger multifamily or potential mixed-use developments that we're starting to see interest in, making sure that our parking ordinance is up to standard on that, and then moving forward through our parking table and looking at comparable uses. So you may see changes throughout it based on what we find is a little deficient. As Mr. Amont showed, there's bank spaces now that have up to 34 parking spaces for a standard sized bank. Typically, driving, you don't see that many people at a bank at one time. We'd like to address them all, make sure that the entire code for parking is up to standard, and then bring it back to council after planning commission review to, bring into code.
I think that's excellent. I actually was going to lead into that. I guess, with the proliferation of drive-throughs, I think that needs to be one of the things that needs to be addressed, because when I go by fast food restaurants, I don't see as many people parking and going inside, say, McDonald's, but I see them stacking in drive-through lanes. So I think that maybe our requirements are too strict for parking spaces, but maybe we need to have more in drive-throughs. And I think the chart, it's on page 35 and 36 of our packet. I thought it was excellent in comparable communities, not just cities like Ann Arbor, but cities like Warren. Warren seems to use 3 times the commercial space per parking spot, and I don't see a significant fall off. So I'm really curious to see what the standard could be and how we could really reduce our parking maximums or whatever, because to me, if you read Strong Towns and you read these books, talk a lot about how a parking space is just thousands of dollars of space provided for the possibility that a car might park there one day. And that's land that's not being used to develop shops or businesses or homes people can live. And it has to be empty, because one day a car might possibly be there, but until that day, it's just an empty piece of land that creates runoff and heat, nothing else. So to me, this is an excellent idea. Reducing RV spaces, that's long overdue. I've been here for 6 years. We never approved an RV space, and I would wonder how long before that. I guess I have one final question. Since I've been here for 6 years, we have land bank spaces. Has a business ever come to the Office of Planning and asked to unland bank any of the spaces that we've land banked over all these years?
Not that I've seen. I believe the largest one that you'll see is the credit union on Van Dyke with the Cherry Grove, and they have a lot of green space, ample for the development, and they have not unland banked any spaces. More recently, the Flats, his land bank spaces in the back, that's recreational space, and there's been no indication they'll move forward with unland banking them at this time.
Right. And I drive past Christian Financial all the time, and I've never seen them use half their spaces that they have there. So they might have too many even now. So I'm very in favor of this, and I hope we move forward. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Radke. Council, anyone else?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Zarko.
Okay, through the chair, to Mr. Parcells. What I would want to know is for existing commercial establishments right now, if they find out that we're going to be changing this ordinance to require less spaces, and they decide that we have all these spaces that we aren't using, how would we go about letting, I guess, them developing the spaces that aren't in use for something else?
It's an excellent question. You see something common in not only the city, but in the country as a whole, the splitting off of outlot parcels to bring more intensive development along right-of-ways. So something that we'd be very happy and eager to work with landowners on is looking at ways to divide parcels, especially along Van Dyke and our mixed-use overlay, and provide a more dense type of development along these out parcels that are typically used for parking, and then bring new development along the corridor that way, kind of retrofitting land that's unused parking and then bringing in new redevelopment. A city like this that's so built out and has so much kind of hardscape already, you have to be a little creative for redevelopment options. And this gives us increased flexibility to work with these property owners to get the highest and best use of their properties.
Okay. But then I guess I look at it the other way, because in some areas of the city, we have strip malls that don't have enough parking. And it depends on the popularity of what's going into those strips. And you don't know what it's going to be when they're initially developed.
Yeah.
So I would wonder what kind of resolution that we have for those particular places.
Yeah, definitely. At the end of the day, the need for parking comes down to the developer, what they anticipate on site and what they anticipate the need of their users for their development will be. We'll work with them to provide the parking within our code at our parking minimums, but we do want to emphasize flexibility. So I think that land banking spaces is a really wonderful option that we'd like to explore writing into code, potentially providing green space and then addressing parking as need arises. And then in the mixed use districts, mixed use nodes and Van Dyke overlay, really reimagining parking within some type of limits that are now going to be codified. So it's not just, at discretion of the project or at the discretion of the Office of Planning, but based on a formula that we see really as a best practice that provides developers this flexibility.
So do you think land banking is going to be something that will be, I guess, encouraged in most of these developments for future use or for green space?
I definitely like the idea of it. I think that it really does provide a good amount of flexibility on site, and particularly when you're moving in with some of these developments and, higher densities, it provides a really nice opportunity for someone like the Flats developer to come back and say, we got down to 1.6 parking spaces, we maybe need 6 more. They have them available on site already, and then they can open them up for the residents to enjoy and benefit.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you, Ms. Zarko. Anyone else? Honestly, I'm not sure why we need any parking minimums whatsoever. Ann Arbor, have they done away with all of them across the board or just certain in commercial areas? Or what was that?
I believe they were across the board.
Yeah. Look, here's,
Multifamily and commercial.
sorry to cut you off.
No.
Here's how I feel. We've got some developers in the room right now, right?
Couple.
Hello.
He's hiding.
If you want to have a successful development, you put a lot of thought into it. You put a lot of money in it. You put a lot of thought. You put a lot of planning into it, okay? A lot more than I am, okay? I spend a lot of time reviewing your developments when they get to the very end, but not a tenth, probably not 100th of the time and energy and resources that the developer puts into it. The developer's got a goal, and that's making money. The property owner has a goal, and that's making money. And if you don't have enough parking for your customers, and then you're not going to get tenants. And so I think that the market will figure out what it needs. I think land banking is a terrific idea. I think Sterling Heights has far, far too much parking. And I think that it should not be the job of the 7 people up here to dictate to the rest of the community what they do with their property in terms of parking spaces. If they make a bad choice and don't have enough parking, they're not going to get customers or they're not going to get tenants because there's going to be nowhere for them to park, right? So I would be inclined to provide as much flexibility as possible. Every time we have, every development that comes before us recently, we're always reducing the parking anyway. So, I mean, to me, I say, why not really go at it? Why not really, if we're going to transform our commercial spaces, and it's another thing I've said many, many times in the past, is that the reason why we have so much congestion on our roads is because we design our roads to take that congestion. And if you design spaces to not have parking, you're not going to have parking, which means you're nudging people to use different modes of transportation and find different ways to get around. And I think it's well worth exploring. So that's my take on it. So I take that for what it's worth, and I look forward to seeing what ends up coming to the city council. All right.
One more thing, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just briefly.
Okay, go ahead, real brief.
One more thing I wanted to add was, I thought of it while we were talking. Adding bike parking to most of the new, especially residential developments, I think is essential. We're doing it for commercial buildings, but I think we should have dedicated bike storage in new buildings, because if we're creating all these trails and all these opportunities, people have to have a place to put those bikes. So that would, something I'd be supportive of. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Oh, one more thing, I'm sorry. And then to Mrs. Zarko's point, I think also making sure that we have cross-parking easements to facilitate people to use all the parking lots available to them are very helpful. I know the Office of Planning works on that currently, but that's the way to reduce maybe one parking lot being stuffed and then the 2 next to it being completely empty, is to have cross-parking easements. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so what do you think, Mr. Koszybski? We vote on this and then we move on to the next one, right?
Yeah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we have another suggested action regarding beekeeping, but I'm certain we're going to have a presentation first. Is that going to be the same lineup as
Same
before?
lineup.
All right.
Yep. So I'll pass this again to Mr. Amott to discuss beekeeping best practices in Sterling Heights.
Great, thanks, Jake. So transitioning over to beekeeping. In this context, really, we're mostly discussing the private, non-commercial beekeeping. So kind of the beekeeping for hobby or for personal production of honey, for example. Really, what this looks like in practice is it involves an artificial beehive, usually kind of constructed like a cabinet with removable drawers or frames within the cabinet. Usually it's, anywhere between about 6 to 20 cubic feet. Why is beekeeping important? So beekeeping is important because of the bees and their pollination activities having a very vital role in agriculture and in our environment. The fact that bees pollinate our flowering plants and trees enables our environment to thrive. Also from an economic standpoint, so residents can produce honey, beeswax, and jellies that can be used personally, or they can be sold at a farmer's market, for example. Moving on to kind of the expert's opinion on beekeeping. So the state of Michigan's generally accepted agricultural management practices provides thorough beekeeping guidelines. Some of the suggested guidelines to keep in mind for a city like Sterling Heights would be to provide a flyaway barrier to encourage the path of travel towards the subject property, not towards neighboring properties. Also to locate hives on quiet or unused portions of the lot. Also to provide a constant water supply nearby, and to direct grass clippings and exhaust of, yard equipment, not towards hives, but away from hives when maintaining your lawn. Looking at some regulations in other communities, Holland, Michigan has some pretty thorough regulations. They require a beekeeping permit. They have a maximum size requirement for the hive at, I believe, 20 cubic feet. They have setback requirements from neighboring dwellings, property lines, and public sidewalks. They require a flyaway barrier, which is essentially kind of a fence or a planting strip or a shrub that is of at least 6 foot in height, and they require a water supply to be constant on the premises. The city of Kentwood, Michigan has very similar regulations to Holland. However, they are a bit more restrictive in the number of hives per property area. They have a calculation there where they, for example, require, I believe, 2 hives for a property of less than 22,000 square feet, and they have kind of a scale for hives per square foot. The city of Warren also has some beekeeping standards. Theirs are pretty strict. Theirs are that they don't allow any beekeeping within 300 feet of any dwelling, store, alley, or public place. Overall, many municipalities actually don't explicitly address beekeeping. They probably rely on an interpretation of their ordinances. Looking at some of the benefits and challenges of beekeeping that we've kind of listed here, the sustainability is a huge benefit. So bees and other pollinators are essential for a vibrant ecosystem. The production of goods and food can help residents economically. Allowing for such activity supports private property rights. There are benefits of codifying it into a code of ordinances, mostly that it creates a more manageable expectation for beekeepers and for neighbors. And then challenges. So there are some obvious challenges. When not managed correctly, bees have a potential to become a nuisance, potentially dangerous for those who are allergic. A lot of it depends on just the beekeeper being responsible and being knowledgeable. Also, if a water supply is not active and maintained on the site, the bees could gather at adjacent water sources on other properties or at other nearby surface water. And then if a flyaway barrier is not provided, the bee flight of travel when coming in and out of their hive could interfere with people and could agitate the bees. Also, bees will be attracted to pollinator-friendly plants, so beekeepers should have flowering plants and flowering trees nearby on their subject property so that bees have easy access to pollinate. And Jake will handle the rest.
All right, so this initially, looking at this topic is a bit interesting to look at from a regulatory perspective. It's something that can actually be very dangerous. It's something that when you look at our long-term visioning plans can hinder what we have for our visions for our safe and desirable neighborhoods, which is why Office of Planning took the direction from Giffords and Webster, looked at this and began to look at regulatory concerns on this. You'll see a site plan here we pulled from the city of Madison that kind of shows how many different things you need to look at when looking at an ordinance for this: distance from houses, distance from other hives, the water needed on site, flyaway walls, vegetation. And we have come up to the determination that if we create an ordinance on this that's not restrictive, enforcement on keeping bees on people's residential lots will become infeasible. Additionally, many of these communities have permitting on the fee schedule for keeping bees on their residential properties, and we need to evaluate looking at different types of permit fees that will cover costs of regulating these types of land uses on residential lots. So staff took the synthesis or information from Giffords and Webster and synthesized it into discussing with council to see if they're inclined to consider an ordinance amendment. Staff wishes to amend the ordinance to ensure that beekeeping is well regulated with generally accepted agricultural management practices. This way we can allow for proper screening, landscaping, and permitting for all sites in the city, making this not a nuisance, safe for people to have in residential neighborhoods if they so desire. And we propose that we'll have an ordinance for review in the next 90 days. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much again, gentlemen. So council, we have another suggested action. Is there anyone that would like to make that motion?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to direct city administration to proceed with the drafting of an ordinance to amend zoning ordinance number 278 and the city code to implement regulations for beekeeping consistent with the recommendations of the Office of Planning.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Sarowski?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Taylor. So through the chair to Mr. Parcells, I do appreciate this, and I do think that we do need to proceed on getting some regulations and an ordinance out there. What I also want to consider, based on some experience with what is happening within our city, you mentioned residential quite a few times. We also have some concern about commercial properties that may or may not be keeping bees. So that needs to be considered within that ordinance and how that would look.
Gladly. We'll cover all sites in the city.
Thank you, I appreciate that. All right, and I do think beekeeping is an interesting prospect. We keep bees at where I work because it is a home for retired Jesuits, and some of the Jesuits are in charge of that. And it's well kept. It's up at the cemetery, so well away from everyone. We don't have a fence line and a wall because they're well away from everyone, but they make wonderful honey, and it's really interesting how that proceeds and goes through the process. So I'm in favor of this. I would rather have the hives than the other option is to allow people to keep and to keep all the dandelions everywhere, because the bees need something to eat. So I would rather see a way to encourage bee growth and encourage the beekeeping, and not have dandelions just go wild and crazy. And although I know that we do need the dandelions in some areas, so it's a trade-off. And I'd like to proceed on this, so I'm very much in favor of it, and let's see what we can do with it. So thank you, Mr. Parcells.
Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am also in favor of this. Mrs. Sarowski put it probably better than I could. I would like to see regulations covering the entire city. As a gardener, bees are essential. I know that there are residents keeping bees right now. I've seen the hives. So let's regulate it so that it's done the right way. It doesn't cause a problem for others. And I think that's pretty simple. I've had the honey from people who keep their own bees, and it's amazing. So to me, this is a minor change, and it'll benefit the entire community, I think, if we do it the smart way. So I look forward to your recommendations.
Thank you. Mrs. Zarko.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I have a couple of additions. First of all, what does 6 to 20 cubic feet actually look like?
So it's a good question. I was putting some thought to that too, and I believe it would be about the size of that podium or smaller. So it's actually, so 20 cubic feet would actually be 2.75 by 2.75 by 2.75. So height, or length, width, and height.
Okay. Another consideration I think that we should look into is for some of these commercial and retail roofs, where they can actually do beekeeping on their roof, which wouldn't have anything to do with neighbors. And then about a couple of years ago, there's a group that's called Bees in the D that actually have a concentration on how to establish hives and maintain them anywhere. And I know that they were interested in putting a couple of hives in Dodge Park. It would be, one would be where the bocce barn is right now, and the other one would be at the Nature Center. And since we're coming up on discussing the budget, I think that it was like $1,400 for each hive, but they actually come out and they take care of the hives, they harvest the honey, and then we could sell the honey like at the farmer's market or at Sterling Fest to recoup some of the money that we put into this. And not only that, is people that have different kind of allergies find that local honey sometimes is better for them than anything else. So I think it's something that we could look into while we're forming this. If we're talking about bees, let's do it all. So if we could do that, I'd really appreciate it, just the research. Nothing further.
Thank you.
Council, anyone else? I'm in full agreement as well. So, council, with no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both for the presentations tonight. Appreciate it. Next on our agenda tonight is a public hearing. This is to consider adoption of a resolution in support of an application by the City of Sterling Heights for a Michigan Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund Development Grant to fund the acquisition of real property commonly known as 37328 and 37356 Utica Road, Sterling Heights, 48312. We have a presentation from Kyle Langloy, again, our Parks and Recreation Director, and Wayne Hoffman from Wade Trim. Whichever one would like it, take it away.
All right, thank you, Mayor Taylor, members of council, all gathered here tonight. I find this presentation to be very fitting. As we mentioned, we just cut the ribbon on the last capstone project of recreating recreation at the Bocce Barn, and certainly thank City Council's vision through recreating recreation and really providing us the latitude to continue to, I guess, dream and evolve our department and our offerings in the community. And so thank you for that opportunity, and I appreciate that opportunity today to bring a new idea to the table for your consideration. So as you mentioned, I'm here today to provide, we're here to provide some background information on the public hearing, which is in regards to a grant application for the acquisition of property directly adjacent to Rotary Park. As noted in the agenda statement, the city has enlisted the services of Wade Trim LLC to assist with the preparation and submission of the grant application to the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund. With that, there is a requirement for a public hearing to be held in front of City Council. Joining me today is Wayne Hoffman. He's the Client Funding Director from Wade Trim. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to him so he can walk us through some of the basic background information before we kick off the public hearing. So,
thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Mayor Taylor, council members, and City Manager Vanderpool for this opportunity. I want to give you a little overview of what we're talking about today. We're trying to find some money for the city. I always like talking about that. But we're talking about Rotary Park. Here's a map of Sterling Heights. Rotary Park is on the east side, over off of Utica Road, and just a little bit west of Hayes Road, so towards the end of close to the city limits. But the key part of this park is it is the end of the Clinton Water Trail in Sterling Heights. So we have a lot of traffic on the river that comes in the way of canoes and kayaks. Rotary Park has some great amenities already for those users. These are some accessible docks that are already there. We also have this really neat portage slide for canoes and kayaks to be taken down from the parking area. The parking area is limited, so that has a limiting effect on what you can do there. Wanted to show a little bit of the acquisition area. There's actually a city right-of-way behind this parcel, so there's a little bit of connectivity there already. But it can be spruced up a little bit and made part of the park system here for the city. Here's the boundary, and some of these are exhibits that go right in the grant to the state that we'll be submitting at the end of this month. As you can see, Rotary Park as it exists is that little skinny piece on the right side, and the subject of today's public hearing is outlined in red. Those are the 4 parcels. There's actually 4 parcels that make up the entire site. This is a very basic site development plan. Everything that's in here you're not committed to do, but the state wants to see that you have a plan to keep this in recreational use. There's lots of different things we could do here, but this gives you an idea of what you can do. You can add a park office, a storage building to help with maintenance, and also a restroom facility, which is currently lacking there. So as people get off their canoes, they usually have to use a restroom. So could be a key addition to this site. The estimated value, this is provided by the city assessor. The caveat with this is there's an independent appraisal currently in process, which the state requires as part of these applications. The estimated true cash value by the assessor is about $262,000 or $262,800. That may change depending on the appraisal. We are able to submit that as an amendment to the grant after we submit it, once we have that appraisal complete. What that looks like in the project budget, we include things such as title insurance, closing fees, environmental assessment. There is some use, some indications of a previous use where they were storing vehicles, so we may need an environmental assessment. But total project cost is just a shade under $280,000. And we are recommending an overmatch. If you provide more than the 25% match, you get extra points. And I think we're well within capacity to do that. So we're looking at a $195,000 grant, $180 grant with about an $83,000 match. Another caveat is that trust fund grants are only provided for the appraised market value, so you can not get more than that through the trust fund. So with that, happy to take any questions. This is a really good project as far as adding recreational amenities to the city.
Okay, Kyle, anything else?
Yeah, and as Wayne mentioned, this is a very unique project and an opportunity for us to expand our footprint down at Rotary Park. Rotary Park, as mentioned, is really a gateway to Sterling Heights from the east. And we have a great thing going with the Clinton River running through Rotary Park and having our universally accessible paddle landing at that site. If anybody wanted to put in their canoe or kayak further up the river, that's about as far as you can get down right now. You really can't get into Clinton Township through kind of that Hayes corridor there, and so it's a very important piece of the water trail and a very important piece for our community. Getting to have this property provides really some neat opportunities down the road for some interpretive education, as well as we know Belvedere Park was on that site over by Rotary Park, and this really ties that area together and provides us great opportunity to access the Clinton River for river maintenance, but also to really enhance the opportunity to provide outdoor recreation and paddle sports in Sterling Heights. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to present this to you tonight and for the opportunity to apply for this grant through the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund. So thank you.
Okay, thank you both. I'm sure we will have some questions, or I think we probably will have some questions, but we're going to open the public hearing first, see if there's any audience participation, then we'll come back during the council's deliberations. So at this time, I would like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Not, I will close the public hearing. And council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt.
Resolved to adopt the resolution in support of the application by the City of Sterling Heights for a Michigan Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund grant to fund the acquisition of property commonly known as 37328 and 37356 Utica Road, Sterling Heights, Michigan 48312.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there any discussion, Mrs. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Yes, just a few comments. First of all, I'm really excited if we can get this money, and I thank you for, our administration is constantly looking for opportunities for grants, and it really is very helpful in making decisions to better our community. As a user of the facilities over at Rotary Park and a kayaker on the river, I think it would be a huge improvement. That property in question can use some sprucing up, to say the least. That's a stretch. It can use a lot of sprucing up. So through the chair to Mr. Langless, so is the plan that the city would be the rental of the kayaks and canoes and the transport down, upriver, and is that what our end goal is?
Mr. Langlois.
Great question. I believe we would take this next year and a half. It takes quite a bit of time to go through this grant process and really look at what the best way to handle the livery services are. There's a number of companies out there, whether we're looking at a public-private partnership, contractual services to utilize a company that can align with our goals and objectives along the river and try and leverage that type of a service, or if we do go through the process of master planning and believe that, collectively it's in our best interest to offer that services, and that'll be a budgetary request down the line that we'll have to look at to acquire the vehicles and the equipment to be able to do that. But the best part about it is if we get our hands on this property, we have options, and we can take a look at what the best options are.
And time.
And time, yes. Most importantly, we have time.
Great. I'm in full support of this. I'm excited, and hopefully it comes to fruition. I have nothing further.
Council, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Yanez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too, am in full support of this grant, or applying for this grant. So this is my neighborhood, full disclosure. I drive by this site every single day. And I agree with Councilwoman Schmidt. Not only does the park need some sprucing up, but this area of Utica Road and Sterling Heights needs some sprucing up. There's no sidewalks there. There's no way for the people who live in the area to use the park. We have an existing older subdivision, a newer subdivision that's still under construction, and then two more vacant pieces of property down Utica Road going towards Hayes that'll eventually have homes on them. And this is the neighborhood park, and it is not a sufficient park for what's already existing, let alone building out that neighborhood. So I think this park will be a catalyst to make that part of our city better. It'll certainly be a catalyst for those who want to do some kayaking or canoeing on the river. I think this will be a great addition, and for really a very low cost to the city to expand and make this expand this park and make that area of our city better. So I fully support the city going for this grant. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Yanez. Mrs. Zarko.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. First of all, I think this is a great idea. I think it's needed, but it's interesting that just 2 hours ago, as we said, we are cutting the ribbon on the last part of recreating recreation, and what's next? Guess what? Didn't take long. So through the chair to Mr. Langlos, is the actual remains of the Belvedere Ballroom on the property that we're considering buying, or is it adjacent to it?
The property that we're looking is really on the, it's on the south side of the Clinton River, whereas the Belvedere Park is more on the north side of the river. Yeah.
Okay. But yes, I think it's a great idea, and if at all possible, if that property that the ballroom was on before ever becomes available, it would be a nice addition to the historic, part of Sterling Heights. So it'll keep our ears open to see if the owner wants to sell that piece as well. But anyway, nothing further. I'm in favor of this.
Thank you, Mrs. Zarko. Anyone else? Mrs. Skoski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to Mr. Lanquist. To follow up on that question, the Belvedere Park, you said, is on the north side of the river?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do we know who owns that property?
Could you bring the picture back up? You could see it.
Because that was my question also, is whether that would be in very close or on the property that we'd be purchasing.
North side of the river.
Yeah, it's a little up past the Palmer Woods Boulevard area, really at the, kind of the northeast section of our parcel of property is where we would be looking. So there's some, continued considerations that would have to be put in place to really make all those connections down the road. But again, this is, as Councilman Yanez mentioned, really a catalyst to continue heading in that direction, to kind of acquire what we need, very similar to how we handled the space where the community center now lies, and, just a thoughtful process over time to get what we need to be able to make that connection and also provide the access we need to utilize that space for what we may want down the road.
So basically, it would be at the end of Rotary Park.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Well, that's your next project. Would you please get the property there, Belvedere Park, so that we can build our little dance hall again? That's all, thank you.
Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I am in total support of this project. I think that Rotary Park has always been kind of a hidden gem because it's so small, and the parking lot is very small. There's a play structure there that was redone, thankfully, because it was falling apart, but this would really expand it. And I agree with Councilman Yanez, adding sidewalks, adding accessibility, because right now it's a small park bounded by two major streets. So even if you're in the play section, you really don't feel that protected or safe or calm, because you have cars zipping on both sides. I think expanding the park and possibly building it out with a master plan is excellent. And I agree with my colleagues, if we could snag the old ballroom, that'd be amazing, but just expanding this part of the park. I frequently have kayaked the Clinton River. Having a restroom at the end of this river would be tremendous. Right now, there's a porta-john, and it's a whole situation, and I think it would be just excellent for the work, not just the workers, but for the people who come down the river. More than that, personally, we've had so many problems with this property owner. And to take this property out of their hands and into our hands, I think would be just tremendous from a complaint standpoint, because we get calls all the time. So I would love to spruce this property up, add to the city, and expand the park. So I am thoroughly in favor. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Mrs. Sarowski.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. So a couple of questions through the chair to Mr. Langlois, I guess, or whoever could answer this. So as Mr. Radke had alluded to, we have had some issues with this property owner. So this property is for sale?
One of the necessary parts to be able to apply for a grant is to have a willing seller. So conversations have been had about
Okay.
the potential for the future. There's no negotiations that have been in place. That would be a violation of any grant stipulations. So
Okay.
has there been interest
There
from
is
both
interest
sides?
then.
There is interest, and that's
Okay.
as far as we've gone.
So that's good. Glad to hear that. And then the appraised value, is that going to include then the business that's already on there, or is it just the property itself?
So a Natural Resources Trust Fund grant is there to secure open space and really park land. So it can't fund the purchase of
The business.
the business, the canoes, the kayaks, the vehicles, that stuff is not in place. So if in fact everything comes to fruition, that's something we would have to look at, whether we'd want to start fresh again. And some of that will depend on whether we're looking to utilize contractual services and find a public-private partnership, do it on, do this service and delivery service on its own. So what this is really getting at is just to purchase the property.
Okay.
Structures that are on it, but besides that, the business side of it is not part of this grant.
Okay. And would we consider, or have we talked about considering, or is that a violation? And you can tell me it's a violation of our conversations at the moment, partnering with the current business owner?
I think all the options are still on the table.
Okay.
So
Those are my questions. So I have nothing further. I am in favor of this, so I'm happy to see that we can acquire that. That is, as everyone has said, an area that does need some sprucing, because spruce continuing further west would be great, but we'll start where we are. So I have nothing further, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Sarowski, I'm in favor as well. No questions. Hope we can get this done. That would be great. So council, with no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item on our agenda tonight is another public hearing, and this is to consider the application by MRFR LLC for a single-family residential planned unit development on 8.53 acres of vacant land situated on the north side of 17 Mile Road, west of Mound Road, PPUD 21-0004. Mr. Parcell.
That's me, yes. All right. Mayor Taylor, members of council, thank you very much. We're here today discussing a PUD development at 5701 17 Mile Road. The project is named Stonehill. I'll be referring to it as such throughout the presentation. Applicant is requesting approval for a PUD to allow development of 20 detached single-family residential condominiums and 4 outlots that will be developable by right as single-family residences. It is in the west side of Mound Road, north of 17 Mile Road. Existing land use is vacant and the current zoning is R60. Master plan designation shows it as innovation support, but also suburban residential. You may have seen this previously in your time on council as a 54-unit multifamily residential development in approximately 2017. But the current project in its revised state, as you're reviewing today, was recommended approval by Planning Commission on May 11th of last year. Here's the site. As you'll see, it's zoned R60, surrounded predominantly north and to the west is R60, RM1 to the south, and then Mound Road, Innovation Support District to the east there. Master land use plan shows it is suburban residential. There's a place of worship to the southwest corner. Also, it's within partially the Mound Innovation Support District. And here's an aerial view. As you'll see here, it's a large, a bit strange shaped parcel that is primarily wooded, vacant land use at the time, abutting a subdivision and some commercial off of Mound Road. And here's a view from the road. You'll see here, there is no real entrance onto the site, but there is a lot of vegetation on site currently forested. And then here's the site plan as shown right now. So the site is developable by 19 lots by right. Their applicant here is going for a 20th lot, thus triggering the PUD process. There will be a private road that goes into here. Office of Engineering will approve that, built to standards of a public road. To alleviate any concerns we may have with fire. There are retention basins west and east on the north and the east side of the development, a walking path around the north with some trees and natural land space areas and amenity for the residents of the homes here. And then the 4 lots I mentioned is developable as single-family homes. A, B, C, and D are to the west there. It'll enter off of 17 Mile Road. Here's the landscape plan. One comment that was relevant during the Planning Commission meeting was enhancing the landscaping along the southern and eastern portion of this to screen around the single-family home, enhance landscaping along the front on 17 Mile Road, and bringing up the landscaping to cover the commercial, protecting houses 4, 5, and 6 on the site plan here. There's also 2 street trees per lot. This will go a long way in helping the tree canopy in the city of Sterling Heights by setting a good standard for landscaping on the overall development. And then they'll be saving existing trees on the northern portion of the property that includes the walking path. There are 3 different elevations proposed by the applicant here. In the PUD agreement, you'll see that this complies mostly with our site plan standards. The bottom will be primarily brick, as required 100% around the ground floor. The upper level will be durable materials as determined by the Office of Planning. You'll see the first and third have about 75% brick on the facade, and the second one has hardy plank that's painted to give it a textured pattern to give a uniform but slightly different model throughout the development. The floor plan here will show approximately a total of 2,500 square foot for the homes. Property value for the properties is anticipated to be north of $400,000, about 1,000 to 1,400 square feet per floor. Then here's some color renderings from the photo. You'll notice there's no street trees in the bottom right there. That's really to show the houses and how it'll line the street. The colors, I'm not sure if they'll be the same color, but they do show painted hardy board and then brick and stone masonry around the ground floor of the homes. So, like I mentioned, this comes in with our site planning standards. Something we look for during our PUD approval process is high quality materials for a high quality development. We believe that we found this with this development. The PUD agreement outlines this very consistently with what we look for when we apply our site planning. It's all no vinyl, high quality materials throughout the development on all of the houses. And then requested modifications. Like I mentioned, it's relatively minimal. They're allowed by right for a site condominium here to develop 19 houses. They're going with 20. This ranges from decreasing the normal lot width by about 5 feet at the smallest to 55 feet to 74 feet throughout the development. And then the lot depth will range from 114 to 120 feet. The smallest residential lot we generally have in our ordinance requirements is 60 by 120. So it's a relatively small modification. And then here, as you see in your staff report as well, is the intent of the PUD. It's to allow flexibility to meet the city's master land use plan. This is master land use on half of the parcel as suburban residential. We believe that this fits the need of or use of a suburban residential development for the city. Additionally, we like to show the standards here from the Planning Commission. This is what they consider when they review of this, how it fits the standard of the area, how it meshes a little bit with the intent of the zoning district. As an R60 district, you're seeing a single family development here that we believe is of a high quality. There's adequate landscaping on site, and we believe that the Planning Commission concerns of the landscaping to the southeast corner were addressed throughout the process in between the two meetings.
Sorry.
Continue. So big picture considerations. With the sustainability plan, we've talked about this a little bit already throughout earlier presentations today, but we like to see land use and including green space. This is a vacant land property right now. We believe that this applicant is providing open space amenities to the north, the walking path, and leaving some natural vegetation there. It's also including the walking path as the amenity and connectivity throughout the site through sidewalks. Additionally, in our Visioning 2030 plan, something that the city of Sterling Heights is looking for is safe and well-maintained desirable neighborhoods. We believe that this development adds to connectivity for pathways for walking and biking, but also a high-quality housing product. Fits in with the Visioning 2030 plan, creating this neighborhood through the PUD process that we think fits in with the character of surrounding subdivisions as well. And with that, I'm open for questions. The applicant is here in the front, also available for clarification.
Okay. Thank you. You know, I got scolded a little bit by the boss because I called you Mr. Parcell when, of course, Dr. Parcell is in order. So, yeah, I see you shaking your head, but.
Call me whatever you want, you know.
He's the boss. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. So, Mr. Ruggieri, or is it Dr. Ruggieri?
Doctor of what?
He's JD, so yes.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Parcell did an excellent job of presenting everything tonight. I just want to emphasize that originally this was a 54-unit condo complex. We ran into a lot of issues with the drain office about stream and so on, and we decided to terminate that project and go a different route in today's climate. The individual lots, 20 houses is a far better product. They'll fit that whole site much nicer. And Fadi Saman, who's the owner of the development, acquiesced in it. Jared, our engineer, helped put this together. In a collective effort and with planning, we were able to come up with an excellent product. They've been very helpful in the design and preserving the open space. You're actually getting a far better product than going the conventional route with 19 houses. Here we get more of a contained contractual development under the PUD, and we have far more open space, amenities, and a product that is very, very tasteful for our community. We're looking at a price range that's going to be over $400,000. It could start pushing even close to the 500 number with the extras. But that's the marketplace today. It's the cost of construction and so on. It sounds like an outrageous number today, but it's reality. And this product will fit very well. There's a lot of interest on the site at this time, and we think this could be an excellent product out there for Sterling Heights. So we're here to answer any questions. Jared here or myself can answer them, and we want to thank Jake and Alexa for all their help. It was a nice collective effort in doing that, putting this together, and that's why we have a PUD that's tailored for this development. So, and by the way, what a great night tonight! It's just life-saving. We're saving the bees. You know, we're doing a lot of great things today. That's great. So, I want to thank everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggieri. Appreciate that. All right, at this time, I will open up the public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this item? Normally, I take the first showing of hands, but this gentleman did not wait for me.
What do you need here, Ben?
name and address?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Kevin Toll, 39261 Adjonta Court. Can you put up the picture of the site? Okay, it shows on there where the, well, it doesn't really show where the church is on Adjonta there.
Yep,
Right there, we can see it, yeah.
And they built 2 houses just past the church? The people who own this property?
so those are not part of this development.
Sir,
Not part of this, they're already up there.
so, sir, based on our council rules, you're going to direct, you can hold his time for a minute. You've got 4 minutes to speak. You're going to direct your comments to me, and there's not really a back and forth with the city council or with
Oh,
the
I didn't
planning.
know.
If
I
you-
didn't know who
That's
I
okay.
talked to.
I'm not trying to like scold you or anything. I just
Yeah.
want to let you know what the rules are. So, we will write down any questions that you have for us or any comments that you have, and we'll respond. But we just don't engage in back and forth like this, okay?
Just north of the church on Adjonta, they built 2 houses already. I believe it was part of the same lot deal here that was, when they put this up. And I'm wondering about the other 4 lots there. What kind of houses they're gonna put? They're gonna put those condominiums there? Or are you gonna put the nice houses like the rest of the street? That's my question. And where does that go out onto Adjonta? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, like I said, we will answer your questions. We're just not going to answer them right now.
Oh, okay, I thought you take them one at a time? No, okay. I guess that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, sir. We will get you those answers. Like, to be clear, you're going to go back, we're going to have all the public hearings, so everybody's going to come up and talk, and we're going to take down everything that they say, and then once everybody's done talking, the city administration will respond. Okay? Thank you, sir. Anyone else on this item? Yes, sir.
My name's Jim Bauer, I live on Willset Court. I actually not here for this, but I thought I'd take the opportunity to tell you that I think this is a great example of a PUD project, much better than the ones we've seen in the past. I was here before to talk about the wedge, which was 8.68 acres, and I think this is a much better use of the property. I think they did a great job in laying it out. And I know I've been very vocal with all of you. You've received emails in the past from me about, changing our PUD ordinance and trying to make it more aligned with what it was actually designed for. But I just wanted to say something nice tonight because the next one I may not be as nice. So, but I just wanted to congratulate you and tell them that they did a great job and it looks great. It's a good example. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Nelson?
Ken Nelson, Fire Steel, Sterling Heights. My questions are more about when are we going to actually sit down and analyze our PUD ordinance and look at possibly changing it? I noticed that we're taking piecemeal little things like beekeeping and all the rest of this in our ordinance 278 instead of going over an entire review of ordinance 278. I also want to congratulate you for this PUD. There aren't 2 digits in the number of modifications requested. That's great. That's wonderful. Single family is the way that I think a majority of the citizens want to go. Giving up 55 or 5 feet on width of a lot. Right across the street from this location is Victory Gardens, which is a full-blown condominium complex. And I imagine that'd be kind of hard to put Victory Gardens into. Yeah. I don't know how you did it, but you did it. So I'm in support of some of these things, but we still have to do these reviews and master land use plan review. When are you going to do that? I don't want to keep seeing all this stuff coming piecemeal where you're taking all the good things and saying, okay, this is what we do. We're going to modify our ordinance, and we need to review the whole thing. You guys are changing it according to what you need. So, but it's a good project. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nelson. Anyone else on this item? If not, I will close the public hearing, and council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Zarko.
resolve to approve the application by MRFR LLC for a single-family residential plan unit development on 8.53 acres of vacant land situated north of 17 Mile, west of Mound Road, PUD 21-0004, subject to the terms and conditions set forth in the planned unit development agreement, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Ms. Zarko?
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. First off, I really like this project. I think you did a lot of change. I think you made a lot of changes to make a lot of people happy. And the fact that you're not cramming everything into every inch of the piece of property means a lot. Now, and I also like the fact that these aren't condos. They are going to be, you know, it's a residential development. The other thing is I think this reflects the changing in what people want now when they buy a home, and they want a bigger home on a smaller lot because they don't want the upkeep of a large yard, except for Mayor Taylor, who's going to do the bees there too, because they'll have so much room. But,
Enough honey for the whole city.
I think he's raising chickens too.
yeah,
Might have to
enough.
get code
There's enough
enforcement out
room there for everybody to have honey. But no, I really appreciate the thought that went into this
I have
project.
enough wild animals.
I bet. But, you know, I appreciate all the effort that you made in making this an acceptable project, and certainly you've heard from the other residents here that think this is a great project too. I'm glad it's not apartments. I'm glad it's not, you know, 5 stories high. So, yeah. But I really wanted to ask is if you go to like the north, it would be the northeast section, is that a walking path that goes around? It is? Great idea, great idea. So yeah, I'm in favor of this, and thank you for all your hard work. I'm so glad that they were here. So then we'll thank the planning department as well. Thank you for working with these developers. Yes, it was a team effort, and it certainly shows it. So thank you very much. Nothing further.
Okay, to highlight the popularity of this development, I couldn't tell who seconded it. I heard like 3 different voices. So, council, I don't know who got the second in, but who wants to go next?
I seconded it, and Maria seconded it.
Who did?
Who did you pick? Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
You won.
I just have a couple of questions.
It was great.
It is a very nice development, but I do have a couple of questions through the chair to Mr. Ruggieri. So you mentioned that the street is a private road. Will that eventually be deeded over to the city?
They don't know.
I believe it's a private road, so it really wouldn't be deeded to the city. They have to be maintained by the association.
Okay. In other developments, the detached condo developments where they've deeded the roads to the city, I was just wondering if that was the case here.
I think that's something we can discuss along the route as it progresses, but typically it'll remain private.
Okay. And also, I noticed there's no ranches. Are they all two-story?
I believe that's the footprint.
Typically, a ranch product has a much wider first floor footprint, which doesn't fit on the smaller lots, so it lends itself more to the 2-story product.
Okay. And I think it was mentioned, but there will be sidewalks
Yes.
throughout. And I'm looking at.
And walking trail.
That great walking trail. So I'm looking at the site plan, and the only lot that I'm questioning is Lot 7. The side of it abuts the back of the car wash. So is there a wall there, or what kind of buffer are you going to have there?
There is an existing wall to the east. And I think there's landscaping. On the landscape plan, you can see the intensity, if we could get to that photograph, from Dr. Parcells.
It's up.
Does it go up?
It doesn't show.
See the darker shading of the, so that's been accounted for for the house that's to the south, kind of like a straight, then to the right, and then up. So I think that,
We're talking about for
that's
7?
inside the wall.
For 7,
She's talking to the far
Lot
top
7.
right.
Lot 7.
right there.
Oh, up there. Yeah, there's intense landscaping. They're not as thick as the southern portion, but
Right.
it's pretty, pretty dense.
But there's a wall behind the.
Yep, there's a wall along that area.
Okay.
That's
So
this,
they know when they buy that's.
that's C3, right next to them, there's a wall.
Is that the
yeah.
clearance lot?
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's a great development, and I really have no further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Mrs. Sarowski?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Taylor. So I just voiced my support of this. I think it's a great use of that 8.53 acres. Density is wonderful when you're on a major road, and even though Mound is a major road, it is not a major commercial retail. It's more industrial, and then if we've got it, this isn't even quite onto Mound Road, it's buffering some of the commercial properties. So I think that this is a wonderful use, and I hope that the residents that buy these properties really are appreciative. It looks like it's got quite a bit of treed lots next to some of these, and I think that that's wonderful. But through the chair to Mr. Ruggieri, if you don't mind, Mr. Ruggieri, to come back up, you said that there was a spring or a river running through it, a little creek?
It's a stream.
A stream?
It's since been abandoned, but there was a lot of eagle issues with the
Okay.
state and so on. It wasn't worth pursuing it to try to get 54 units. It's better to do this product.
Okay.
It's much more efficient. It's better overall. We're happier with this.
Yeah, and that's good. I grew up out kind of in the country where we could play in the water and run in the streams, and so the kids will love that. So I think that that'll be a wonderful amenity for them to have, so I appreciate that as well. So thank
Sure.
you, and I have no further questions. I'm also in favor of this, so wonderful.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Council, Mr. Radke?
Excuse me. Just very briefly, I like this design, but I was also curious, like the gentleman in the back, the other 4 lots, through the chair to Mr. Parcells, they're being split off, and they're going to be designed and built as part of the subdivision to the west. Am I correct in saying that?
You are. They are split through a Land Division Act to be developed by right as single-family homes with entrances from Agenta Court. They will be held to cite design standards through the city to alleviate concerns from the public hearing, meaning that they will be high-quality materials as determined by the Office of Planning, generally similar to other homes you'd see on that subdivision.
Okay. Just me, myself, I think that, I know it's designed to be a private road, but often these are deeded back to the city. I think that I would prefer it being deeded back to the city, just so we could have, uniform snow removal and everything else for the residents. I like the sidewalks. I kind of was like, do I want sidewalk on the south side of the one cul-de-sac? But it seems like it's just open space. It doesn't make a lot of sense there, but this looks like a very nice product. I think that you're going to be able to sell these homes pretty easily, and it's going to be a very nice neighborhood, so I am in favor.
Council, Mrs. Kosky?
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Ruggieri, you have sidewalks in front of the condos, correct? And then you have a walking path made of gravel, correct? Which goes around a area to the northeast part of the property?
Yes, and the
What is going to be in the center of that? Is that just going to be open green space, or?
Yeah, yes, it'll be open space, and the gravel is meant to keep it more natural in appearance, and it deviates from the sidewalk itself. That's, I think it's all concrete, the sidewalk.
Yes, the sidewalk's concrete, and the walking trail is going to be gravel there, but the intent is to leave all the mature trees in that back area and meander that pathway through there, so it's not going to be like an open field or anything. It's going to be
Habitat for deer and things like that?
Absolutely.
And rabbits?
And bees.
And more bees.
And bees? You can have my raccoon too, and my little groundhog that showed up this morning. You've got 2 retention basins around the cul-de-sac. Is that correct?
You might want to state your name.
Jared Kime with Atwell. It's a split detention system, so it will act as one detention basin with a culvert between there connecting them for the drainage standpoint, but it's essentially one basin that we're working with.
Okay, so one would not overflow, flood.
Yeah, they're connected, so it will equalize.
Okay. And that would take care of any water flow coming down from the northern area. Looks like a great project. You should sell out quickly.
That's the plan. Thank you.
And your price range again is going to be,
Depends who's buying now. No, it'll be like 4.25 and up, in that range, 425,000 and up.
and that includes your 4
That's your base price.
properties, lot A, B, C, and D?
The other 4 lots, they'll be very comparable in price, if not a little higher.
But typically the same design?
Yes.
2-story,
Right.
square footage? Again, square footage,
2,400 square feet are these
24 to
lots.
34?
Yeah, those lots are a little bit larger, but we anticipate to be a very similar product.
Very good. Looks good.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Kosky. Anything, Henry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I think everybody has asked a lot of good questions. I think, too, it's a fine project, and that's all I have.
Okay. Sir, did we get your questions answered? Yeah, that was asked. They're going to be, so those 4 on Ajanta, lots A, B, C, and D, are going to be designed based on the standards of the neighborhood already there. There's, the administration, Mr. Parcells said that the planning is going to make sure that they're developed to be consistent with the same type of standards and materials, so that they will blend in consistently with the rest of that neighborhood. All right? Does the street come out to Ajanta? No, there's going to be no connection between the proposed private drive and Ajanta. Is that right, Mr. Ruggieri? Yeah, I don't have it, I had Google Maps pulled up, but, yeah, so no connection. So there'll be two separate drives. All right, so council, with no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right,
Congratulations.
congratulations, good luck. Great to be seeing you again, Mr. Ruggieri and Fadi. Always a pleasure dealing with you and working with you, and we expect another great product. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it. That's okay. It's all right, I know. I stalled for you as long as I could.
I feel bad for coughing.
All right, moving on, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, and this is an ordinance introduction. This is to consider introduction of ordinances, amending the City Code of Ordinances and zoning ordinance number 278 to regulate the use of paving materials and allowable sizes for driveways, extension strips, service walks, turnarounds, and approaches on single-family residential lots, regulate single-family residential lot front yard coverage with impervious material, and require planting of new and replacement of missing, dead, diseased, and harmful street trees. And I'd like to know who wrote that. Presentation from our Assistant City Planner, Jake Parcell, and Alyssa Erickson, Assistant City Attorney.
Mr.
Probably a lawyer at Clark Andrews. Go ahead, sorry.
No, he wrote that, so I'll let him have that. All right, so we are looking today at addressing our impervious surface ordinance update. This is within the zoning code. There's also a regulatory portion as well that covers some of the engineering and building concerns for this. So first and foremost, the purpose of this amendment, as we were directed, is to create an ordinance that is used to mitigate stormwater runoff and establish a max impervious surface coverage of 40% in front yard of single-family lots. This also reviews residential sites for compliance with current street tree requirements, require the installation of street trees, and update the requirements related to street trees in our ordinance. This establishes minimum and maximum width of single-family driveways, cleans up typographical issues, eliminates inconsistencies, and creates a zoning ordinance that regards driveways and clarifies requirements in the existing ordinance language. You'll see here in the first two slides, examples of driveways staff pulled from throughout the city that are not in compliance with what we are proposing tonight. These driveways are at a higher percentage of width than what is going to be proposed here, and in most areas, a much higher percentage of paving worth the driveways and parking pads that are allowed in the city. So to start off, to give you a little bit of a primer to the ordinance does address new definitions. This includes different types of alternate paving materials, driveways, driveway extension strips, and really codifying different types and percentages that we'll have on our sites through our driveway ordinance. The ordinance at its core shows that 22 feet would be the maximum driveway width here. This is what we see as a standard for a two-car garage in the city. The maximum here would be measured from where the driveway meets the right of the property line. These next few photos you'll see in your packet here were created through our work with Giffords Webster. Not necessarily to scale what you'll see for some typical lots, but showing what you'll see on different lots throughout the city. So this has a 30-yard setback and a 22-foot wide driveway. Driveway here typically has a 27% front yard paving percentage, and then allows for other hardscaping to get pathways in and out of the house. So different types of driveways that you'll see throughout the city that we've had questions about that this ordinance would cover. For example, our horseshoe driveway. You may be allowed to build these as put in this ordinance still. We're not restricting this type of driveway so long as the driveway is 22 feet in width, which is about the width of a private road, and also has the impervious surface coverage of less than 40% on the front of the property. Additionally, this covers turnaround pads on right-of-ways that are wider, 86 feet, and that are really busy. A turnaround pad is nice to have to turn around there. As long as the turnaround pad does not exceed 200 square feet and your front yard paving does not exceed 40% of the total square footage of your front yard, this is permitted in the city as well. So, to give you a primer on how we came to this in the ordinance, essentially the front yard paving that you'll be looking at and we'll be looking at through our driveway permits takes the total area of the front yard in square footage is defined by taking the front yard setback of the home to the front yard setback of the property line, taking the area of impervious surface materials and dividing that to create a percentage of the front yard covered by impervious surfaces. Calculation here, it is allowing for a maximum of 40%. And we came to this number by evaluating similar nearby communities and also doing a sample of existing Sterling Heights driveways. We find that with the 22 feet typical for a two-car garage, allowing for some different types of flares up to there, turnaround parking pads and horseshoes, that 40% is a fair number to allow for adequate landscaping on the site. So we have done a comparable community study, and something that really stands out to us here in the planning department at Sterling Heights is we're one of the few communities that does not regulate front yard paving in any way. You see examples of all these strange paving throughout, whole entire front yards paved, very wide driveways. Most of them on a typical R60 lot are something that other communities would not allow. You'll see here that communities have as small of lots as 10-foot driveways for single-car garages. Other communities, such as Southfield, a comparable community nearby, show that 65% of the front yard and side yard shall be landscaped. We are under the interpretation that our ordinance is proposed here is not very restrictive. We're allowing for different types of driveways, adequate paving to lead up to garages for vehicle storage, and enough paving for all additional hardscaping, porches, walkways, and things like that. But we would like to use this ordinance to find a way to regulate this in the city as a standard of uniformity as our intention shown above. So, another question that we've had throughout our process here, something that does exist in this city, is if there's 3-car garages, how can you have the driveway width expanded to meet the garage stalls? In the regulatory ordinance and also referenced in the zoning code ordinance that you have in front of you tonight, Office of Engineering does approve flares that go out. So if you have your driveway, you go out, you can park in all 3 of your garage stalls. Additionally, that meets the intent of what the garage is there for. You're allowed the paving to go there so long as you're under the 40% to move your vehicle and maneuver it into each of the garage stalls while still having the 22-foot wide driveway on the approach. Something that's also discussed is the effects on existing driveways in the city. As shown, there's photographic examples of driveways that are wider than 22 feet and driveways that cover over 40% of the front yard. Typically, as you see with nonconformities in land use, when these are legally nonconforming, if something happens where they are destroyed beyond repair, need to be replaced, or need maintenance, then if it is over 50% of the driveway being replaced, it will need to come into conformity with the new ordinance requirements. Something that we typically see on pretty much any non-conforming structure should it have any damage greater than 50%. Additionally, this ordinance addresses impacts on street trees. There's 2 sections in the ordinance here. In your paper, it is in section 4, C and E, essentially saying if you are going to replace your driveway or rebuild or add new impervious surfaces onto the driveway, you will need to plant a street tree to come in compliance with our ordinance. A review of this shows that you can work with the Department of Public Works to plant your street tree. If you are on a single-family lot with 1 frontage, you'll be required 1 street tree. On a side corner lot with 2 frontages, 2 street trees. The roots for street trees help also supplement the stormwater runoff as intended by this ordinance because the tree roots help with infiltration. Also, this is a way to help when adding new paving to address the city's tree canopy. This ordinance was reviewed by the Sustainability Commission and the Planning Commission in the last month. The Sustainability Commission recommended that City Council adopt the proposed ordinance. The Planning Commission moved their recommendation forward that City Council does not recommend or does not adopt the proposed ordinance by a vote of 6-1. And then I'm opening it for questions. I believe you'll also have some public hearing comments, but here's an example of the intention of what we're trying to do here. We have a driveway here shown that loops around the back to a garage that we believe is a driveway that meets our code under 40% and 22 feet in width. Leads right to the garage, allows for parking, and then a driveway below that is non-conforming by what this ordinance would propose. Essentially, we're a community that doesn't regulate this in any way on our single-family lots. A review of best practices, a review of other surrounding communities shows that we are entirely, alone in not regulating this. We'd like to provide something that allows for an increase of impervious surfaces, or managing the impervious surfaces, and then also addressing street trees through the ordinance as well. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item? All right, why don't you guys make a quick decision here?
Arm wrestle.
Ken Nelson, Fire Steel. This is another piecemeal on what I was bringing up before. Would you please just go and look at all the things that you're not happy with and bring it up for review by the Planning Commission or whoever you have to do that? My only concern is, I don't know, Mr. Taylor, you might be concerned about something like that with all that concrete you have in front of your new house. What would happen, what would happen if you wanted to make changes? So, but other than that, that's fine. I want to put a circular drive in my side yard. So 100% landscape in the front yard and putting a turnaround in my side yard. So I'm interested in knowing what you would do with that. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Hello, my name's James Serrati, live on Mendel Drive. I just wanted to speak to the, what would happen to people that already have driveways that would now be non-conforming. I am currently actually going through something with the ZBA in regards to a driveway, so this has piqued my interest. I just want to give you guys an idea that make it sound like if you had a driveway that was not conforming, you'd have to go in front of zoning boards. Give you an idea of cost, permits, I believe around $200. That gets denied, you have to go in front of the zoning board of appeals, that's $490. And then you could potentially have to go in front of the Board of Ordinance Appeals, that's $230. If that's approved, that's an additional $50 a recording fee. You could also get approved in the zoning board and denied in the ordinance board, And then you would still have to pay for if you don't have trees, that's $250 a tree. If you live on a corner like me, that's $500. That is just under $1,500 before anything happens. And you could be denied. And then you would have to also still have to pay for the landscaping that is no longer concrete. I started my process in September. I finally got through the zoning board in February, so it can potentially be a lengthy process. My costs went up 40% according to my contractor. And then when they're asked at the planning commission if they had an idea of like how many residents this would affect, they really didn't have an answer. So to give you an idea, I went for a walk today down my street. It's not a long street. There are already 4 houses that would be affected. And then another question is in the planning commission meeting, they said anytime concrete is replaced, not just added, you have to add a tree. So my question is, if I also have to replace the city's sidewalk at some point, do I also have to plant the city's tree? Just a question. And then another thing too is like, even if my house is in compliance, it's around, like I said, it's around $200 for a permit. And then if you don't have a tree, it's now $400 for a permit. And for someone like my mother who is on a fixed income, that's already like cost prohibitive. These are things just to, I want you guys to consider, especially since I think like he's right, there are a lot of houses that would be non-conforming and they were allowing this. Now you guys might be creating an additional problem for yourselves. I believe that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else on this item? Come on up.
Jim Bauer, Wilsett Court. I've sent everyone an email there tonight addressing some things. I probably can't get through all my questions or my concerns. The first thing I want to bring up, though, is that Mr. Cerati is my son-in-law, and he actually started this process a lot earlier. I started in April, and one of the things we got is a letter from someone named Building Inspector. He's got the letter that says, city zoning and engineering standards do not allow driveways and approaches to exceed 24 feet wide for a 2-car garage. According to Mr. Vanderpool, there isn't anything that dictates the amount of paving that you can have or not have in the front yards. And so basically, Mr. Parcells said, yes, it was 24 feet. It's an engineering. It's not in the zoning ordinance. This no-name inspector says, yes, it is. Mr. Vanderpool basically said, no, there wasn't. So it seems like the residents aren't getting the correct information, whether it's not training for your people or just blatantly, I hate to see lie, but we're not getting the right information for the time. All right. I also did some drawings, just like the consultants did, except I used mostly 60-foot wide lots. So 40% of 60 feet is a 24-foot wide driveway. So if you go 22 max, you're going to have a sidewalk because you require sidewalks to go to your front entrance and stuff like that. If you take a sidewalk from the porch to the public sidewalk, now you can only have a 21-foot wide driveway to meet that 40%. And then I got a whole bunch of them here. You guys all have copies of it. And then what happens if somebody builds a 3-car garage on a 60-foot lot? I sent you copies of drawings that would fit on a 45-foot wide buildable area. And now you're going to go from 22 to 32, 34 feet. That's going to be more than, in order to get your cars in and out of the garage, that's going to be more than 40%. Let's see, what else? And one of the things that in the ordinance they have written, and they probably need to change it, is they refer to an overhead door on a garage. Probably 95%, 98%, 99% of the houses do have overhead doors. But I sent you pictures of 7 different types of vehicle access doors to garages. Only 3 of them were overhead. They have folding, carriage, barn doors, horizontal sliding doors. So if they base their requirements on an overhead door, then if someone doesn't have an overhead door, then how do you look at that? Okay, they're tying themselves down to only people with overhead doors. Also, people with carports, they don't have any doors. Okay, I showed you pictures of houses in the subdivision by me that have carports. You know, if hot spots, you know, all the concrete paving, if you're worried about hot spots, if you look at your hotspot map, there aren't any hotspots in any of the residential areas. It's all the commercial, city center here, except I couldn't find the new recreation building on there. That must have been done before that, because that should have had a little bit of red in there too. Let's see, what else? And then in Mr. Sarati's case, you know, they're worried about too much paving. He wanted to widen his driveway. His problem is his driveway's only 15 feet long. That's why we had to go to the ZBA. From the garage to the sidewalk is 15 feet. The house was built in 65. So then we asked about abandoning the sidewalk, which just runs to the dead end. You have a picture in that I sent you. And Mr. Parcell said that, no, the city is not interested in giving up any of their sidewalk. But if you let him build his driveway and then get rid of the sidewalk, it takes care of the problem of him parking over the sidewalk. It takes care of, you know, the corner clearance for people walking down the sidewalk for backing him up. And it also, you'd have a net deficit of about 200 square feet of impervious surface. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bauer. Mr. Inks?
Nathan Inks, Sterling Heights resident. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to you, council, Mr. Vanderpool, Mr. Koszybski, and the rest of city administration. At the outset, I think it's important to acknowledge that nobody likes being told what they can and cannot do with their property. But this is the very essence of zoning law. And while property owners often do not want to be told what they can and cannot do with their own property, there are standards that a majority of residents in our city want to see maintained. We know this because when individuals feel that certain actions will violate those standards, they frequently come before you and come before the Planning Commission to voice their opinions that what somebody wants to do with their property violates the standards that we want to see in our community overall. We see this frequently when a major development is proposed on property abutting a single-family residential district. In other words, while most people do not like it when a regulation is applied to them, they also do not want the city to become a free-for-all for any development. Good policies must balance these two competing factors, and I believe that the proposed ordinances provide such a balance. We know that our residents want desirable and aesthetically pleasing neighborhoods with green space. Too much of the city has already become overpaved, and we should seek to do the same in our residential neighborhoods. I think most residents would agree with me that houses plopped into the middle of a parking lot would not be aesthetically pleasing. The proposed ordinance will help prevent our neighborhoods from looking like that. We also know that there are benefits from decreasing pavement and increasing tree coverage. Climate change is only going to exacerbate the consequences of urban heat islands and heavy rain events. Decreasing pavement coverage and increasing green space and our tree canopy will help keep our city cooler and ensure that we do not suffer the problems that other communities in our area have suffered by overwhelming their stormwater systems. Mayor Taylor brought up earlier tonight in the context of parking minimums the idea that market forces often drive what will become an appropriate development. And I generally agree with that principle. I certainly agree with it in the context of parking minimums. But when a development has negative externalities that begin to affect the community and the residents around it, that principle that market forces should be the driving factor needs to give way. And I believe that this is one of those instances where negative externalities give way to that principle and that market forces shouldn't be the only thing that we're looking at. The negative externalities that come from overpaving in our residential areas are much more significant than any negative externalities that come from underparking a development in our commercial districts. This ordinance will undoubtedly cause hardships and difficulties for some property owners, but our zoning ordinance already contains a provision to account for such circumstances, and property owners have an avenue for relief through the variance process. If council feels that the current variance application fee is burdensome, they can always reduce the application fee for this specific variance. And I would encourage you to look at that. Additionally, the 40% and the 22 feet might not be the magic numbers. Office of Planning has put together a very thorough, comprehensive study of what other cities are doing. You know, maybe the answer is 24 feet instead of 22 feet. So if council is not necessarily happy with the proposal as it stands, I think there are tweaks that can be made. But overall, the benefits of the proposed ordinance far outweigh the costs, and I would encourage you to adopt either the proposed ordinance or something very close to it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Inks. Ms. Wright? How'd Teddy do today?
He was wonderful. They all were.
I missed this.
Our kids had a school thing, chorus, whatever it was, yeah. You watch the video, I'm sure, when you get home.
Lots of videos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. So generally speaking, I do think that an ordinance needs to be accepted. However, I'm not agreeable with the 40%. A lot of you know we moved here from Royal Oak. Part of the reason is because we had a single-family driveway, and every winter, my husband and I would have to switch back and forth. He worked nights, I went to school during the days. By the time he got home and parked behind me, I had to be up 3 hours later and at school. So then I would have to get out in the middle of winter, drive his car in front or down the street, move my car, and then come back for his. It was a mess. When we searched for our home, one of the things we wanted was either a 2-car attached garage or some way to allow us to get in and out of our house very close by. We didn't want to have to traipse through our yard. We are one of those people that have a horseshoe driveway. Now, we only have a single drive straight back to the unusable garage, unfortunately, but we have the horseshoe. I am lucky, even though my house is in R60 zoning, our frontage is 85 feet. That is what saves us from having to fall under this over 40% ordinance. So I'm not really here for me. I'm safe. We're at 36, 37% roughly. However, my neighbor, who is an immigrant here, who owns a small business that she runs out of her house, takes care of her 2 disabled grandsons and her elderly mother, she's roughly at 47, 48% because she also has a horseshoe drive. So essentially what you're saying is when she has to replace her driveway, which she will because driveways only last 20 to 30 years, so this is going to impact everyone, she will have to tear that up or go before the ZBA and show hardship. So either way, she's going to have to pay additional money that she most likely does not have in order to get a variance or to dig up the existing drive and replace it with sod. A number of individuals in our city are in a similar position. I agree, I don't want to see houses that have parking lots in their front yard. It doesn't look good. However, I think we can come to a better decision to where it's not going to negatively impact as many people as I think this ordinance will. Or we could even say that once, grandfather people in, you can continue to update or replace your driveway until you sell the house. Once you sell your home, those new owners are then falling under the brand new ordinance. That way it doesn't negatively impact current residents who own their homes. I do want to say I agree with the tree ordinance. I think we all know that city trees are one of the best ways to decrease speeding in our neighborhoods. I think every house in this city needs to have a street tree in front of it, whether that's putting one in when it's time for you to do your sidewalks or when you're doing your driveway. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Anyone else? All right, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
do we take them at once or we take them one at a time, I assume? Just suggested actions?
How do you want it done, Mr. Koszybski? You would usually do it one at a time.
Okay.
They're interrelated, but if you do them one at a time, that's fine.
Okay.
You won't necessarily have to have discussion on the second
Sure.
one, if any.
Resolved to introduce the ordinance amending Article 5 of Chapter 48 and Section 15 of Chapter 51 of the City Code of Ordinances to regulate the use of paving materials for driveways, extension strips, service walks, and approaches on single-family residential lots, and require replacement of dead, diseased, or harmful street trees.
Is there a second? Going once, twice. All right, there's no second. Motion fails. Would you like to take the second, Mr. Radke? Or do we want to just?
I'm going to just read it really quick, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I'll try it, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know what the difference is, I'll be honest with you, but resolved to introduce the ordinance amending section 31.01 of Article 31 and section 3.04 of Article 3 of the zoning ordinance 278 to regulate single-family residential lot front yard coverage with impervious materials, allow for an additional paved turnaround, establish allowable driveway widths, and require street tree installations where impervious surfaces are replaced or added.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Hearing no second, motion fails for lack of support. Thank you for your comments. We'll move on. The next item on our agenda is to consider adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 49 of the City Code of Ordinances to provide for cost recovery associated with non-emergency medical responses. Do we have a presentation tonight from anybody? Mr. Vanderpool? Okay. I'll open up to the audience. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 49 of the City Code of Ordinances to provide for cost recovery associated with non-emergency medical responses.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Sarowski?
You know, we really went over this quite thoroughly at our last meeting, so I am just going to say I'm extremely in favor of this. I think we need to recover our costs where our services are being abused by certain facilities, and I'm 100% in favor of this, and I am going to vote yes, and that's all.
Okay. Council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the consent agenda. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on tonight's consent agenda with the omission of item H? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next on our agenda is a consideration item, and this is to consider a request by the Warren Consolidated School of Performing Arts Booster Club Incorporated for recognition as a local nonprofit organization for the purpose of obtaining a state of Michigan charitable gaming license.
That's mine. I don't know, do I
Come on up.
come up? This is my first time, so
You've waited all night.
I just put the application in, so.
Okay,
I'm Elizabeth
so,
Bailey, I'm the treasurer for the Booster Club.
yeah, so, you can take as much time or as little time as you want. If there's anything you want to tell us about the organization, about the event that you're going to be hosting, things like that, I'll be honest, it's going to get through. So, you don't have to worry too much and be too nervous.
I'll give you the quick basics. So our Booster Club supports the Warren Consolidated School of Performing Arts through volunteerism. We provide food for the kids during their Tech Week meals. We support the program. And one of the things that we also do is we try to reduce the cost for parents so that they're not having to contribute so much during the course of the year. So one of the things that this will allow us to do is to do 50-50 raffles so that we can do like small quantity, $500 or less, 50-50 raffles at our different shows and our events to try to earn money that way.
Perfect.
So,
Thank you very much. If we have any questions, we'll call you
all
back
right,
up.
sounds good, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Schmidt.
Resolved that the request from Warren Consolidated School of Performing Arts Booster Club Incorporated of Sterling Heights, County of Macomb, asking that they be recognized as a local nonprofit organization for the purpose of obtaining a state of Michigan charitable gaming license be considered for approval. Provided, however, that this action is not an endorsement of the organization and the city of Sterling Heights should not be listed on any promotional material associated with the charitable gaming activities.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Schmidt?
Just a comment, I'm really familiar with WIXPA and their phenomenal performances. I think they have one going on right now. So Newsies Junior, right, is this weekend, and if anyone has not experienced one of their performances, it is professional. It's top-notch, and they do a fantastic job. So to help, fund their adventures and their phenomenal performances, I think this is, I know being a past booster executive over at Sterling, it's a tough job to raise funds to help these kids. So it's all about the kids. So we wish you well.
Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Mrs. Arco?
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. First of all, I'm in favor of this as well. I have to say that this last weekend, I actually saw a performance of the Detroit Youth Choir, and you understand the importance of performing arts in the lives of young people. And certainly, I think we should all support your efforts because you're doing the heavy lifting on this and making these, kids get the education that they need, the discipline that they need in order to be able to do this. So kudos to all of you, and I wish you luck.
Thank you, Mrs. Arco. Council, anyone else? If not, with no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Congrats and good luck. All right. Now this is, so we actually have item H off the agenda. So we're going to move on to communications from citizens. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to communicate on anything that was not on tonight's agenda? Mr. Nelson.
You may not have noticed, but I haven't been here for a number of weeks. Been busy. But I wanted to come and I want to add one more thing in organization of agendas and everything. While I was gone, there was an item came up in the manager's report that turned into a hubbub for quite a number of hours, I understand. First of all, I want to congratulate the ladies for the councilwomen for standing by your principles and opting out. That's what I'm talking about. That I don't think that anything that is going to possibly turn into a major discussion, a presentation, or whatever, should come or there shouldn't be any action taken. So that's the one item that while I'm talking about getting everything done at the same time, you might want to consider doing that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nelson. Anyone else under communications from citizens? If not, I'll close that portion and move on to reports from city administration. Anything tonight, Mr. Vanderpool?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Mr. Koszybski?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Council, any reports or new business? Mrs. Arco?
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. First of all, sometimes I feel that we are very, very fortunate to be sitting in these seats because we have opportunities that other people don't have. And an opportunity this past weekend, on Saturday morning, when the temperature was below 25, I think, and the wind was blowing, we had the opportunity to be at the groundbreaking for the Bosnian American Islamic Center on 16.5 Mile. I hope that the city was as welcoming to them as they were to us, because we were treated royally when we were there. You know what, and they also appreciated all of our departments here at the city in order to get to where they're at in their process. We also found out that they have like a stone that they place, and then everybody there goes and puts, well, in this case, it was cement, because, into this, on the stone, and that forever, anybody that took part in placing that stone will be prayed for forever and ever. And we all know that we can use prayers, so I was grateful for that. But I really, truly thought, as cold as it was outside, everybody had a warm heart, and I really appreciated being invited. Nothing further.
Thank you. It was quite an event. It was very, very cold, but very memorable, and I echo that we want to thank the Bosnian American Islamic Center for their hospitality, and We had to scoop that cement quickly, or else it would have froze.
Yes,
It was cold.
it was cold.
Anyone else? Mrs. Sarowski.
So, thank you, Mayor Taylor. I just wanted to say, just a real quick reminder that yes, it is now spring, and we're looking very much forward to the summer and with Sterling Fest, and I am so excited to meet Ann Wilson of Heart. You have no idea, this girl who has been playing guitar since she was 10 years old and singing and jamming, and I get to meet Ann Wilson. I'm in heaven. So Bob, or whoever picked Ann Wilson out of the crowd, I thank you. And all the other little singing girls who've grown up with Ann Wilson, I'm with you. So I just can't say how happy I am. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Sarowski.
Yay.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Yanez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're just a few weeks away. We have our Shine cleanup coming up in May, but prior to Shine, we have Earth Day coming up in a little less than a month. I do a project every year, and this year I am looking for suggestions. So if you have something in your neighborhood that looks like you need some trash cleaned up, please get a hold of me through my city email address, and be happy to consider coming out to your neighborhood, bringing a crew of people, and doing a little cleanup. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Yanez. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
just very briefly, I was the one who asked for item H on the consent agenda to be removed from the agenda today. I asked because I was wondering if a DDA versus a CIA, I was hoping to get more information about that. I asked some questions right now because in a TIF district, which is, we're expanding, it looks like there'll be more money raised than we need to pay off the bonds. So I wanted to make sure the money could be spent within the district. Hopefully, city administration will give us some more information about that, and we can make a decision about a CIA or a DDA for that area. I'm frustrated about driveways, only because I had a lot of questions to ask the city of planning about it. At this point, residents can pave their entire front yards, and I would expect them to start doing that, because now they know. And it's frustrating because, you know, the point of a driveway ordinance, and it doesn't have to be 40%, it could be 60%, it could be whatever, is to stop runoff, is to, prevent heat islands, and is to basically aesthetically make our city look better. Because I don't think anyone believes that a 4-car driveway, a 3-car driveway, and I mean 3 across, so a 6-car driveway. Because I have several in my dad's neighborhood that I walk by every day. I don't think those are aesthetically pleasing. I don't think anyone wants to live next to them. And it's one of those things where if we don't step in as a city and regulate, then it's just going to happen, and we're going to get more and more complaints. I live in the South End. I get a tremendous number of complaints about this. I know no one else lives in the South End, so maybe it's just a South End problem. But something I think about quite a bit. You know, going along with that, even if we had removed the driveway part, but we had required the street trees, just for people who want to replace their driveway, that would help us increase the number of street trees we have. You know, reports say that we have a 19% tree canopy in Sterling Heights. It's one of the lowest areas in the Tri-County, in the 5 counties that surround us. We have one of the lowest tree canopies, bar none. And we're just going to keep on decreasing it. We're doing nothing to improve it, and we're not putting any regulations in place that are going to prevent runoff, heat islands, and essentially, trees not only stop speeding cars, they raise property values, they cool neighborhoods. It's very frustrating. And beyond that, eventually, we're going to have to decide what kind of city we want to be. Because if we can't regulate driveways, how are we going to regulate ADUs? How are we going to make mixed-use districts? Because any little change around here is opposed to the 12th degree of everything. So how are we going to make those changes that we need to move our city in another direction, especially when we have reports of cities like Southfield, like Chesterfield around us who have these ordinances in place? You know, I don't see people clamoring in Chesterfield, raising their pitchforks. And I thought that Mr. Inks made several good points. You know, if we want to allow this to go through a variance process, if people want to keep their larger driveways, or we can just extend the number, it could be 50%. We could set the amount for the ordinance request. It doesn't have to be the standard variance, it could be something less. We could make it easier for people. As it stands now, we let the people who are ruining our neighborhoods, frankly, and I'll admit that, I think it's a ruining of the neighborhoods.
they're running roughshod over us. So I would hope that we really put our heads together and come back with something, because we talked about this in strategic planning last year. It was ranked in the upper quadrant. That's why it came before us. And now all of a sudden, we can't even talk about it. Not even vote it down. We couldn't even talk about it. So I think that that says something about us, and we really need to examine why that is. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else?
Mayor Taylor, second bite for really quickly.
Okay.
And I just do want to, so thank you for your indulgence. Absentee ballots will be mailed out this Thursday, or this coming Thursday, March 23rd. So please keep your eyes open for them in your mailbox. And please be ready to, these are the applications for the absentee ballots? The actual ballots. Okay, very good. I just wanted to be clear on that. So please keep your eyes open for those. Be ready to fill them out, and we look forward to having your participation. And I guess I do want to comment on Mr. Radke's statement really quickly. I think that, Mr. Radke, just as a comment, it wasn't that we were not interested in engaging. I think it was a little bit of government over, we, at least myself, I felt that it was government overreach on regulating something as simple as a driveway. And if it was as serious as you say, maybe then it would have been something that we would have addressed, but it is not that much of a problem that we needed to address it at this time. So that was my feelings, is to not participate in the vote. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Strowski. Anyone else?
Yes.
Mrs. Koski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment on the driveway paving ordinance that.
Discussion.
Mr. Radke, please, go ahead, Ms. Koski.
Okay. Just a comment that the reason I could not support that is my property is a pie shape. It's at the end of or I should say, at the beginning of a cul-de-sac. So my front yard, or I should say, where my front yard touches the street, it's a curve. I have enough room for a mailbox. Couldn't put a tree in, so I donated the money back to the city to plant a tree into the park. I have a 3-car garage, turned. My front sidewalk does not go straight out to the street. It turns and enters into my driveway. So I have a very large driveway and not a very big front yard. It looks big because we don't have fences. And just the way the house is turned. So it would be very difficult for me to shrink my driveway, because then I couldn't turn and get into the garage. I need the room to make the turn. I think we should be writing an ordinance that addresses the issues that we want to change. The ordinance should address the fact that we don't want somebody paving their full front yard. We don't want them doing X, Y, or Z. And I think that's the direction that we should be taking in writing that ordinance. Because otherwise you're going to be affecting people that the driveways were put in when the house was built. This is the way the builder had to do it, because he turned the house on that little parcel to get it to fit in. For me to make any repairs to that driveway means that I would have to tear the whole thing out, shrink it down, and I don't know where in the world I would put that tree. So I'm saying, yes, we do need it for the people that are abusing it, but let's address the problem. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Koski. There's one left. Anybody else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, look, I have to be honest. I understand that the problem is that, well, let me take a step back. I believe that the problem is when you just pave your whole front yard without any consideration for where your garage is and how much actual front yard space you have. One of the pictures that we were shown, it looks like the entire front yard was just paved. And I get that that's a problem. But I also think that there's an inequity when you're impacting people who have had their houses designed, developed, built, and their driveways installed. Like Ms. Koski, I'm looking at Ms. Koski's house on Google Maps, and I don't know what you would do. Really don't know. I don't know what you do. Because, you know, her lot is very similar to mine. We're on the end of cul-de-sacs, so you've got this like pie-shaped lot, right? And so the front yard is tiny, and the backyard, it gets wider as you go out. So if I have a 3-car garage, and then I have a strip of paver to one side of it, and then my neighbor's driveway is immediately adjacent. So you have 2 driveways that are immediately adjacent with a little bit of brick pavers in between them. So yeah, it doesn't look great, and it's not a great setup, but that's how it was developed. I didn't build the house, and I didn't develop it. That's what I bought. And so for people who live in the city and had that expectation when they bought their house or when they developed their driveway, I think it would be kind of punitive to make them change, because, you know, there's going to come a time where, you know, my driveway is probably 30 years old or almost 30 years old. So I'm not going to get another 30 years out of it. And then what are you going to do? I mean, how am I going? There's no possible way I could comply with the ordinance as it was written today. It would look worse. So I don't think that we should just abandon this completely. I think we should tweak it, and I think we should come back with something completely different, frankly. So that's my take on it. All right. As Mr. Yanis had said, he was back in the football season. His inspirational comments helped the Detroit Lions make a push to the playoffs and almost did it. And so I'm going to say, in the spirit of the recent St. Patrick's Day, Mrs. Sarowski, go green.
Go white. Go white, yeah.
All right, so let's go Spartans. By the time we come back, I don't know, we might know their fate by then. So good luck to the Spartans and to all the Michigan State alum and supporters out there in Sterling Heights. Enjoy the Sweet 16 and hopefully the Final Four. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.